In the shadowy halls of a grand English estate, a wealthy lord is found dead, poisoned, with a cryptic message etched beside his body, a riddle that taunts. The serpent hides in the garden of secrets. Who left it? Was it his elegant wife, harboring a forbidden affair, or the secretive doctor with a grudge? Enter the unassuming Miss Jane Marple, the sharp-eyed spinster from a quiet village, teaming up with the brilliant Hercule Poirot and his loyal friend Captain Hastings, as more enigmatic clues surface: a misquoted poem, a misplaced brooch, a vanished ledger. They unravel a web of lies, betrayals, and hidden motives among a circle of suspects trapped in the mansion. But what if the killer is watching their every move, leaving messages that dare them to solve the puzzle before another strikes? Will Marple's intuition about human nature and Poirot's little gray cells expose the truth in time? Or will the final twist shatter everything they thought they knew? Dive into this lost Agatha Christie-style mystery. Miss Marple faces a killer who leaves cryptic messages. A tale of suspense where every clue matters, and the reveal will leave you breathless. Stay tuned for the full 15-chapter audiobook adventure. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Harrington Manor. In the gentle haze of an English autumn afternoon, Captain Arthur Hastings motored his way along the winding lanes of Devonshire, his reliable Austin chugging steadily toward Harrington Manor. The year was 1932. And the world outside the bustling cities seemed untouched by the economic woes that plagued the nation. Hastings, recently returned from a rather dull stay in London, had been delighted to receive an invitation from his old acquaintance, Sir Reginald Harrington, to spend a weekend at the family estate. Sir Reginald, a prosperous importer of exotic goods from the East, had always been fond of gathering an eclectic group of guests for his country house parties, and this occasion promised to be no exception. As the manor came into view, Hastings couldn't help but admire its imposing facade. Harrington Manor was a sprawling Georgian structure, its stone walls covered in ivy that glowed golden in the fading light. The estate was surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens, a maze of hedges, and a small lake that reflected the cloudy sky like a polished mirror. It was the kind of place where one expected nothing but polite conversation, fine claret, and perhaps a spot of shooting in the woods. Yet, as Hastings pulled up the gravel drive, he felt a subtle undercurrent of anticipation, or was it unease, in the air. He dismissed it as the residue of too many idle days in the city. The butler, a tall, stoic man named Wilkins, greeted him at the door with a bow. "Captain Hastings, sir. Sir Reginald is expecting you. The other guests have begun to arrive." Hastings handed over his hat and coat, glancing around the grand hall with its oak-paneled walls and portraits of stern Harrington ancestors staring down disapprovingly. "Splendid, Wilkins. Who else is here?" Sir Reginald mentioned a lively crowd. "Indeed, sir. Lady Harrington is in the drawing-room with Miss Victoria Langley, the young novelist. Mr. Geoffrey Harrington, Sir Reginald's nephew, arrived this morning from London. Dr. Elias Thorne is here as well, along with Mrs. Lydia Beaumont and Colonel Marcus Fitzroy." Hastings nodded, recognizing some names. Geoffrey Harrington was Sir Reginald's heir presumptive, a dashing but somewhat reckless young man who worked in the family business. Dr. Thorne was a local physician known for his sharp mind and interest in toxicology, a hobby, he claimed, born from his travels in India. Mrs. Beaumont was a wealthy widow, a close friend of Lady Harrington, rumored to have a keen eye for investments. Colonel Fitzroy, retired from the Indian Army, was an old comrade of Sir Reginald's, fond of regaling others with tales of his exploits. As Wilkins led him to the drawing-room, Hastings heard the murmur of voices. The room was elegantly furnished, with heavy velvet curtains framing tall windows that overlooked the gardens. A fire crackled in the grate, warding off the chill. Sir Reginald stood by the mantelpiece, a robust man in his late 50s with a neatly trimmed mustache and a booming laugh that filled the space. Hastings, my dear fellow, come in, come in." Sir Reginald strode forward, clapping Hastings on the shoulder. "So good of you to join us. I trust the drive was pleasant." "Quite, thank you," Hastings replied, shaking hands warmly. "Your invitation couldn't have come at a better time." London was becoming unbearably stuffy. Sir Reginald chuckled. "We all need a bit of country air now and then. Let me introduce you properly." He gestured to his wife, Lady Evelyn Harrington, a graceful woman with silver-streaked hair and a serene smile that belied a sharp wit. "You know Evelyn, of course." "Lady Harrington," Hastings said, bowing slightly. "Always a pleasure." "And this is Miss Victoria Langley," Sir Reginald continued, indicating a striking young woman in her mid-20s, seated on a settee with a notebook in hand. Her dark hair was bobbed in the modern fashion, and her eyes sparkled with intelligence. "Victoria is writing a novel something mysterious, I believe. She's promised to entertain us with snippets over dinner." Miss Langley smiled modestly. "Only if the company insists, Sir Reginald. I'm afraid my tales pale in comparison to real life." Next was Geoffrey Harrington, lounging by the window with a cigarette in hand. He was tall and handsome, with the easy charm of youth, but Hastings noted a faint tension in his posture, as if he carried some unspoken worry. "Uncle speaks too kindly," Geoffrey said, shaking Hastings' hand. "I'm just here to escape the office drudgery." Dr. Elias Thorne, a bespectacled man of about 40 with a thoughtful expression, rose from his armchair. "Captain Hastings, I've heard of your adventures. Weren't you involved in that curious affair with the stolen jewels last year?" Hastings waved it off modestly. "Merely a bystander, Doctor. My friend Poirot did all the work." "Ah, the famous Hercule." "Poirot," Thorne said, his eyes lighting up. "A remarkable mind from what I read in the papers." Mrs. Lydia Beaumont, an elegant woman in her 50s dressed in muted pearls and silk, extended a gloved hand. "Charmed, Captain. Reginald has told me so much about your war service. You must share stories with the Colonel, Colonel Marcus Fitzroy." A burly man with a ruddy face and a military bearing grunted in agreement from his seat by the fire. "Indeed, Hastings, India, was it? I spent 20 years there myself. Tigers, rebellions a lot." As tea was served delicate china cups filled with Earl Grey, accompanied by scones and clotted cream, the conversation flowed easily at first. Sir Reginald spoke animatedly about his latest shipment of artifacts from Egypt, including a rare Gara beetle amulet he planned to display. "It's said to bring good luck," he joked. "Though Evelyn thinks it's cursed." Lady Harrington laughed lightly. "Nonsense, dear. But do be careful. Those things have a way of stirring up envy." Hastings noticed subtle dynamics among the group. Geoffrey seemed distracted, glancing occasionally at Miss Langley with what might have been affection or concern. Mrs. Beaumont and Lady Harrington exchanged knowing looks, as if sharing a private jest. Dr. Thorne listened intently, his fingers steepled, while Colonel Fitzroy dominated with anecdotes, his voice booming over the others. Beneath the politeness, however, Hastings sensed an undercurrent of tension. It was nothing over a fleeting frown from Geoffrey when Sir Reginald mentioned the family business, a sharp intake of breath from Mrs. Beaumont at the word inheritance, or the way Dr. Thorne's eyes narrowed when the Colonel boasted of his marksmanship. Even Wilkins, as he refilled teacups, moved with a quiet efficiency that suggested he observed more than he let on. As the afternoon waned, Sir Reginald suggested a stroll in the gardens before dinner. The group dispersed, some heading outdoors, others retiring to their rooms. Hastings lingered, chatting with Lady Harrington about the estate's history. "It's been in the family for generations," she said, her voice soft. "But times are changing. Reginald works so hard to keep it all together." Hastings nodded sympathetically. "He seems in fine spirits." "Yes," she replied, though her eyes betrayed a hint of worry. "Though lately, he's received some odd letters, anonymous notes, with peculiar riddles. He laughs them off as pranks, but I wonder." Before Hastings could inquire further, Geoffrey interrupted, calling Lady Harrington to join the walk. As they left, Hastings stood by the window, watching the guests wander the paths. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn. He couldn't shake the feeling that this weekend, idyllic as it seemed, held the promise of something more sinister. Dinner that evening was a formal affair in the dining room, with candlelight flickering on silver and crystal. Sir Reginald sat at the head of the table, regaling the company with tales of his travels. The menu was exquisite: consomme, roast pheasant, and a decadent chocolate souffle. Conversation turned to puzzles and mysteries, prompted by Miss Langley's novel. "I adore a good riddle," Miss Langley said, her eyes bright. "Something that teases the mind." Sir Reginald grinned. "Speaking of which, I received one just yesterday. A note slipped under my study door. The first is silent, the second a key. Together they unlock what you cannot see. Utter nonsense, but amusing." The table chuckled, but Hastings noted Dr. Thorne's thoughtful expression. "Sounds like a cipher." The doctor mused. "Perhaps sound and key now. That doesn't fit. Or I and key for icky. But that's silly," Geoffrey added lightly, though his laugh seemed forced as the evening progressed. The group retired to the library for brandy and cards. Hastings, partnering with Colonel Fitzroy in bridge, found himself enjoying the camaraderie. Yet, as the clock struck 11, Sir Reginald excused himself briefly to check on some papers in his study. He was gone only a few minutes when a sharp cry echoed from the hall. Wilkins rushed in, his face pale. "Sir, come quickly, it's Sir Reginald." The guests hurried to the study, where Sir Reginald lay slumped over his desk, a glass of whiskey overturned beside him. His face was contorted in agony, and clutched in his hand was a small scrap of paper with another cryptic message scrawled in bold letters. "The clock strikes once for the fool who trusts." Dr. Thorne knelt beside him, feeling for a pulse. "He's dead," he announced gravely. "Poison, I suspect. And this note, it's no prank." The room fell silent, the weight of shock settling over them like a fog. Harrington Manor, once a haven of tranquility, had become the scene of a murder. Chapter 1. The invitation to Harrington Manor in the gentle haze of an English autumn afternoon. Captain Arthur Hastings motored his way along the winding lanes of Devonshire, his reliable Austin chugging steadily toward Harrington Manor. The year was 1932, and the world outside the bustling cities seemed untouched by the economic woes that plagued the nation. Hastings, recently returned from a rather dull stay in London, had been delighted to receive an invitation from his old acquaintance, Sir Reginald Harrington, to spend a weekend at the family estate. Sir Reginald, a prosperous importer of exotic goods from the East, had always been fond of gathering an eclectic group of guests for his country house parties, and this occasion promised to be no exception. As the manor came into view, Hastings couldn't help but admire its imposing facade. Harrington Manor was a sprawling Georgian structure, its stone walls covered in ivy that glowed golden in the fading light. The estate was surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens, a maze of hedges, and a small lake that reflected the cloudy sky like a polished mirror. It was the kind of place where one expected nothing but polite conversation, fine claret, and perhaps a spot of shooting in the woods. Yet, as Hastings pulled up the gravel drive, he felt a subtle undercurrent of anticipation, or was it unease, in the air. He dismissed it as the residue of too many idle days in the city. The butler, a tall, stoic man named Wilkins, greeted him at the door with a bow. "Captain Hastings, sir. Sir Reginald is expecting you. The other guests have begun to arrive." Hastings handed over his hat and coat, glancing around the grand hall with its oak-paneled walls and portraits of stern Harrington, ancestors staring down disapprovingly. "Splendid, Wilkins. Who else is here?" Sir Reginald mentioned a lively crowd. "Indeed, sir. Lady Harrington is in the drawing-room with Miss Victoria Langley, the young novelist. Mr. Geoffrey Harrington, Sir Reginald's nephew, arrived this morning from London. Dr. Elias Thorne is here as well, along with Mrs. Lydia Beaumont and Colonel Marcus Fitzroy." Hastings nodded, recognizing some names. Geoffrey Harrington was Sir Reginald's heir presumptive, a dashing but somewhat reckless young man who worked in the family business. Dr. Thorne was a local physician known for his sharp mind and interest in toxicology, a hobby, he claimed, born from his travels in India. Mrs. Beaumont was a wealthy widow, a close friend of Lady Harrington, rumored to have a keen eye for investments. Colonel Fitzroy, retired from the Indian Army, was an old comrade of Sir Reginald's, fond of regaling others with tales of his exploits. As Wilkins led him to the drawing-room, Hastings heard the murmur of voices. The room was elegantly furnished, with heavy velvet curtains framing tall windows that overlooked the gardens. A fire crackled in the grate, warding off the chill. Sir Reginald stood by the mantelpiece, a robust man in his late 50s with a neatly trimmed mustache and a booming laugh that filled the space. "Ah, Hastings, my dear fellow, come in, come in." Sir Reginald strode forward, clapping Hastings on the shoulder. "So good of you to join us. I trust the drive was pleasant." "Quite, thank you," Hastings replied, shaking hands warmly. "Your invitation couldn't have come at a better time." London was becoming unbearably stuffy. Sir Reginald chuckled. "We all need a bit of country air now and then. Let me introduce you properly." He gestured to his wife, Lady Evelyn Harrington, a graceful woman with silver-streaked hair and a serene smile that belied a sharp wit. "You know Evelyn, of course." "Lady Harrington," Hastings said, bowing slightly. "Always a pleasure. And this is Miss Victoria Langley," Sir Reginald continued, indicating a striking young woman in her mid-20s, seated on a settee with a notebook in hand. Her dark hair was bobbed in the modern fashion, and her eyes sparkled with intelligence. "Victoria is writing a novel, something mysterious, I believe. She's promised to entertain us with snippets over dinner." Miss Langley smiled modestly. "Only if the company insists, Sir Reginald. I'm afraid my tales pale in comparison to real life." Next was Geoffrey Harrington, lounging by the window with a cigarette in hand. He was tall and handsome, with the easy charm of youth, but Hastings noted a faint tension in his posture, as if he carried some unspoken worry. "Uncle speaks too kindly," Geoffrey said, shaking Hastings' hand. "I'm just here to escape the office drudgery." Dr. Elias Thorne, a bespectacled man of about 40 with a thoughtful expression, rose from his armchair. "Captain Hastings, I've heard of your adventures. Weren't you involved in that curious affair with the stolen jewels last year?" Hastings waved it off modestly. "Merely a bystander, Doctor. My friend Poirot did all the work." "Ah, the famous Hercule." "Poirot," Thorne said, his eyes lighting up. "A remarkable mind, from what I read in the papers." Mrs. Lydia Beaumont, an elegant woman in her 50s dressed in muted pearls and silk, extended a gloved hand. "Charmed, Captain. Reginald has told me so much about your war service. You must share stories with the Colonel." Colonel Marcus Fitzroy, a burly man with a ruddy face and a military bearing, grunted in agreement from his seat by the fire. Indeed, Hastings, India, was it? I spent 20 years there myself. Tigers, rebellions a lot. As tea was served delicate china cups filled with Earl Grey, accompanied by scones and clotted cream, the conversation flowed easily at first. Sir Reginald spoke animatedly about his latest shipment of artifacts from Egypt, including a rare Gara beetle amulet he planned to display. It's said to bring good luck, he joked. Though Evelyn thinks it's cursed. Lady Harrington laughed lightly. Nonsense, dear. But do be careful. Those things have a way of stirring up envy. Hastings noticed subtle dynamics among the group. Geoffrey seemed distracted, glancing occasionally at Miss Langley with what might have been affection or concern. Mrs. Beaumont and Lady Harrington exchanged knowing looks, as if sharing a private jest. Dr. Thorne listened intently, his fingers steepled, while Colonel Fitzroy dominated with anecdotes, his voice booming over the others. Beneath the politeness, however, Hastings sensed an undercurrent of tension. It was nothing over a fleeting frown from Geoffrey when Sir Reginald mentioned the family business. A sharp intake of breath from Mrs. Beaumont at the word inheritance, or the way Dr. Thorne's eyes narrowed when the Colonel boasted of his marksmanship. Even Wilkins, as he refilled teacups, moved with a quiet efficiency that suggested he observed more than he let on. As the afternoon waned, Sir Reginald suggested a stroll in the gardens before dinner. The group dispersed, some heading outdoors, others retiring to their rooms. Hastings lingered, chatting with Lady Harrington about the estate's history. It's been in the family for generations, she said, her voice soft. But times are changing. Reginald works so hard to keep it all together. Hastings nodded sympathetically. He seems in fine spirits. Yes, she replied, though her eyes betrayed a hint of worry. Though lately, he's received some odd letters, anonymous notes, with peculiar riddles. He laughs them off as pranks, but I wonder. Before Hastings could inquire further, Geoffrey interrupted, calling Lady Harrington to join the walk. As they left, Hastings stood by the window, watching the guests wander the paths. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn. He couldn't shake the feeling that this weekend, idyllic as it seemed, held the promise of something more sinister. Dinner that evening was a formal affair in the dining room, with candlelight flickering on silver and crystal. Sir Reginald sat at the head of the table, regaling the company with tales of his travels. The menu was exquisite: consomme, roast pheasant, and a decadent chocolate souffle. Conversation turned to puzzles and mysteries, prompted by Miss Langley's novel. I adore a good riddle, Miss Langley said, her eyes bright. Something that teases the mind. Sir Reginald grinned. Speaking of which, I received one just yesterday. A note slipped under my study door. The first is silent, the second a key. Together they unlock what you cannot see. Utter nonsense, but amusing. The table chuckled, but Hastings noted Dr. Thorne's thoughtful expression. Sounds like a cipher. The doctor mused. Perhaps sound and key now. That doesn't fit. Or I and key for icky. But that's silly, Geoffrey added lightly, though his laugh seemed forced as the evening progressed. The group retired to the library for brandy and cards. Hastings, partnering with Colonel Fitzroy in bridge, found himself enjoying the camaraderie. Yet, as the clock struck 11, Sir Reginald excused himself briefly to check on some papers in his study. He was gone only a few minutes when a sharp cry echoed from the hall. Wilkins rushed in, his face pale. Sir, come quickly, it's Sir Reginald. The guests hurried to the study, where Sir Reginald lay slumped over his desk, a glass of whiskey overturned beside him. His face was contorted in agony and clutched in His hand was a small scrap of paper with another cryptic message scrawled in bold letters. The clock strikes once for the fool who trusts. Dr. Thorne knelt beside him, feeling for a pulse. He's dead, he announced gravely. Poison, I suspect. And this note, it's no prank. The room fell silent, the weight of shock settling over them like a fog. Harrington Manor, once a haven of tranquility, had become the scene of a murder. Chapter 3. The unexpected guest dawn broke over Harrington Manor with a reluctant gray light, filtering through the heavy curtains of the library where the guests had spent a sleepless night. Captain Arthur Hastings rubbed his weary eyes. The events of the previous evening were playing in his mind like a grim tableau. Sir Reginald Harrington's body still lay in the study, untouched, as per Hastings' insistence, awaiting the arrival of Inspector Japp or whoever the local authorities might send. The air in the room was stale, heavy with the remnants of cigar smoke and unspoken accusations. The group had dozed fitfully in armchairs, no one daring to retire to their bedrooms for fear of what might lurk in the shadows of the house. Wilkins, ever the dutiful servant, had prepared a pot of strong coffee at first light, serving it with trembling hands. The inspector should be here soon, sir, he murmured to Hastings. I telephoned again at 6. Hastings nodded gratefully, sipping the hot brew. His thoughts turned once more to Hercule Poirot. In the small hours, he had scribbled a urgent telegram and dispatched Wilkins to the village post office at dawn. Murder at Harrington Manor. Poison. Cryptic notes. Need your gray cells urgently. Hastings. Now. As the clock struck 8, the sound of a motor car crunching on the gravel drive brought everyone to their feet. Through the window, Hastings spied a police vehicle, followed unexpectedly by a sleek black taxi. From the latter emerged a familiar figure, small, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, patent leather shoes gleaming despite the mud, and a mustache waxed to perfection. Hercule Poirot, his green eyes sharp as ever, surveyed the manor with a calm detachment. Poirot, Hastings exclaimed, rushing to the door as Wilkins admitted the visitors. You're here already, but I only sent the wire this morning. Poirot inclined his head, a faint smile playing beneath his mustache. Ah, mon ami Hastings, you underestimate the efficiency of the postal service and the intuition of Hercule Poirot. No, I received no wire from you. I was en route to Devonshire on a matter of my own, when I chanced upon a newspaper vendor at the station crying headlines of murder at Harrington Manor. Naturellement, I diverted my journey, and here I am, to assist my old friend. Behind Poirot stepped Inspector James Japp of Scotland Yard, a sturdy man with a no-nonsense air, his face set in grim lines. Morning, Hastings, Japp said gruffly. The local lads called me and suspected foul play of a sophisticated sort. And who do I find on the train but this little Belgian? Insisted on tagging along. Poirot sniffed delicately. Tagging along? Non-inspector. Hercule Poirot does not tag. He arrives precisely when needed. The guests, gathered in the hall, stared at the newcomers with a mix of relief and apprehension. Lady Harrington, her eyes red-rimmed from grief, stepped forward. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings has spoken so highly of you. Please, you must help us. My husband. Poirot bowed deeply. Madam, my deepest condolences. I shall do all in my power to bring justice to this tragic affair. Japp, wasting no time, directed the local constables to secure the study and begin their examinations. Right. Let's have a look at the scene. No one's touched anything, I hope. Hastings assured him, and the group trailed into the study, where the body of Sir Reginald lay as they had left it. The morning light revealed details overlooked in the panic of the night. A faint smudge on the whiskey glass, the scarab amulet from Egypt resting on the desk blotter, and the cryptic note still clutched in the rigid hand. Poirot moved with his characteristic precision, his small hands clasped behind his back as he circled the room. He paused at the desk, tilting his head like a bird eyeing a worm. The note, Inspector. May I? Jap nodded, and Poirot gingerly extracted the paper, reading aloud. The clock strikes once for the fool who trusts. HMM. Poetic, yet precise. And the method cyanide, you say? Dr. Thorne, who had joined them, confirmed with a nod. Yes, Monsieur Poirot, in the whiskey. I believe, quick acting. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But why cyanide? It is not a poison. Of passion, non. It requires planning, access, and this note left in the hand. As if to ensure it is found, the killer wishes to communicate. Jap grunted, taunting us, more like, we'll dust for prints, of course. Now, let's get statements from everyone. The inspector herded the group back to the library, where he set up a makeshift interrogation area by the fireplace. Poirot, declining a chair, paced slowly, his gaze flitting from face to face, absorbing the subtle tells, Geoffrey's fidgeting fingers, Miss Langley's watchful eyes, Colonel Fitzroy's stiff posture. First, Lady Harrington recounted the evening, her voice steady but laced with sorrow. Reginald was in high spirits. He mentioned those silly riddles at dinner, but nothing seemed amiss until Poirot interrupted gently. These riddles, madam. Tell me of them. She repeated what she had told Hastings, the anonymous notes, their cryptic content, Sir Reginald's dismissal. He burned most, but one I remember. The shadow that follows the light betrays the dawn. He laughed it off. Poirot's mustache twitched. Betrayals and fools. A theme emerges, and his business imports from the east. Any rivals? Debts? Lady Harrington hesitated. The business was thriving, but there were tensions. Geoffrey handles much of it now, but Reginald mentioned discrepancies in the accounts recently. Geoffrey shifted uncomfortably as eyes turned to him. Uncle was mistaken, he said quickly. A minor error with a shipment from Cairo. Nothing. Serious, Poirot nodded thoughtfully, then turned to the alibis. Each guest repeated their whereabouts, the bridge game in the library, Geoffrey's cigarette on the terrace, Miss Langley in the drawing room, Dr. Thorne in the cloakroom, Wilkins in the pantry hearing light footsteps. Footsteps, Poirot mused. Light, measured. Not those of a man in haste. Then, and you, Mademoiselle Langley, a novelist of mysteries, how convenient. What were you writing? Miss Langley flushed slightly. Just ideas for my book. A story about hidden motives. In a country house, ironically. Hidden motives, Poirot echoed. They are always there, beneath the surface. Colonel Fitzroy, next, spoke brusquely of his friendship with Sir Reginald from their India days. We shared adventures, tiger hunts, border skirmishes. But lately, he confided in me about a loan. I'd advanced him funds for a venture that soured. A loan, Jap pounced. How much? £5,000, the Colonel admitted, but he was repaying it. No quarrel there. Mrs. Beaumont, elegant even in distress, revealed her own connection. Evelyn and I are old friends. Reginald invested in my late husband's estate profitably, I might add, but he'd been pressing for repayment of a personal debt. Dr. Thorne, the last, described his medical practice and interest in poisons. From my travels, he explained, but I assure you, I had no cyanide here. Poirot smiled enigmatically. Assurances are one thing. Doctor, facts are another. As the interviews concluded, Jap conferred with his men. The study window was locked from inside, no forced entry. Poison likely in the decanter or glass. We'll test for prints and residues. Poirot, standing by the window overlooking the gardens, turned suddenly. Hastings, mon ami, walk with me. The air will clear the mind. Outside, the autumn mist clung to the hedges, the lake a somber mirror. Poirot strolled deliberately, his cane tapping the path. What do you make of it, Hastings? It's baffling, Hastings admitted. Everyone has a motive. Money, inheritance, old grudges, and those riddles taunts from the killer. Precisement, Poirot said. The riddles are key. They are not mere decoration, they point to the psychology of the murderer. One who enjoys games, who believes themselves cleverer than all, they paused by the lake, where a small boathouse stood. Poirot's eyes narrowed, and the scarab on the desk Egyptian, non, Sir Reginald's latest acquisition. Symbolic, perhaps, before Hastings could respond. A constable approached, breathless. Sir, we've found something in the study's safe opened. It was papers missing, and another note. The beetle crawls. Where the sun sets, hiding the truth in darkness. Poirot's face lit up. Ah, the plot thickens. The safe, was it forced? No, sir. Combination lock. Someone knew the code. Back inside, the guests reacted with alarm. Geoffrey paled. The safe. Uncle kept business documents, their contracts, wills. Lady Harrington gasped. The will. Reginald revised it recently. Geoffrey inherits the estate. But there were provisions. Poirot gathered them. Ms. Amos, this is no random act. The killer is among us, weaving a web of clues. But Hercule Poirot will untangle it, using the little gray cells. As the day wore on, tension mounted. Japp's men searched rooms, finding nothing conclusive. Poirot, meanwhile, requested plans of the house and timelines, sketching a map on paper with alibis noted dot by afternoon. Another discovery, in Geoffrey's room. A typed page with riddle drafts hastily burned in the grate. Geoffrey protested innocence. I was trying to decipher them for Uncle. Poirot merely nodded. All will be revealed in time. Hastings, watching his friend, marveled at the calm assurance. Yet beneath it, he sensed Poirot's mind racing, piecing together the puzzle of poison, riddles, and hidden secrets at Harrington Manor. Chapter 4. The interrogation's deepened morning sun had given way to a persistent drizzle by midday, casting Harrington Manor in a somber, muted light that seemed to mirror the mood within. The library, now a makeshift headquarters for Inspector Japp's investigation, buzzed with the quiet efficiency of constables taking measurements and dusting for fingerprints. Hercule Poirot, however, preferred to conduct his inquiries in his own way, seated in a high-backed armchair with a small notebook in hand, his sharp green eyes scanning the assembled guests. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by his side, marveling at the Belgian's ability to remain unruffled amidst the growing unease. Inspector Japp, wiping rain from his coat, addressed the group with characteristic bluntness. Right, we've got a murder on our hands, and no one's leaving this house until we've got answers. The study's locked tight, no sign of forced entry, so the killer's likely one of you or the staff. I'll need detailed statements, and Monsieur Poirot here will assist. Poirot inclined his head modestly. Merci, Inspector. But let us proceed with method and order. The mind of the murderer is revealed not in grand haste dolorous. Haste, but in the small details. I propose we begin with the precise movements of the evening. A murmur of discomfort rippled through the room. The guests, seated in a tense semicircle, exchanged glances. Lady Harrington, pale but composed, clutched a handkerchief. Must we do this again? She asked faintly. We've already told you where we were. Poirot raised a hand. Patience, madam. The truth is like a delicate tapestry. It must be examined thread by thread. Let us reconstruct the timeline with care. Monsieur Hastings. If you please, the details of the evening. Hastings, consulting his own notes, cleared his throat. At approximately 10:30 p.m., Sir Reginald excused himself from the library, where most of us were playing bridge or conversing. He said he was going to his study to check some papers. At 11 p.m., Wilkins heard a cry and found him dead. Poirot nodded. And the alibis, s'il vous plaît, Hastings recounted. Lady Harrington, Mrs. Beaumont, Colonel Fitzroy, and himself were at bridge. Geoffrey Harrington was on the terrace smoking. Miss Victoria Langley was in the drawing room writing. Dr. Elias Thorne was in the cloakroom. Wilkins was in the pantry. Hearing light footsteps at 10:45, Poirot turned to Wilkins, who stood rigidly by the door. These footsteps, Monsieur Wilkins. You are certain of the time? Yes, sir, Wilkins replied. I glanced at the kitchen clock. It was just after 10:45. And you saw no one? No, sir. The hall was dim, and I was at the far end. Poirot's mustache twitched. Very well. Now, let us consider the poison. Cyanide, Dr. Thorne, you said. How might one obtain it? Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles. It's not uncommon in certain circles. Used in photography, pest control, even some industrial processes. But it's tightly controlled, requires access to a laboratory or supplier, or a medical practice. Poirot asked smoothly. Thorne bristled. I'm a physician, not a chemist. My poisons are medicinal, Monsieur Poirot. Of course. Poirot's tone was placating, but his eyes gleamed. And you, Monsieur Geoffrey, you handle the business accounts. Any recent troubles? Geoffrey's jaw tightened. As I said, a minor discrepancy with a Cairo shipment. Uncle was overreacting. Overreacting. To what, precisely? Geoffrey hesitated. Some funds were misallocated. Temporarily. I sorted it out. Poirot turned to Miss Langley, whose pen hovered over her notebook. Mademoiselle, you write of mysteries. Did Sir Reginald's riddles inspire you? She smiled faintly. They intrigued me, but they're too cryptic for my taste. I prefer motives to puzzles. Yet puzzles reveal motives, Poirot countered. The note in the study, the clock strikes once for the fool who trusts, suggests. Betrayal. And the safe, opened without force, contained another. The beetle crawls where the sun sets, hiding the truth in darkness. Who knew the combination? Lady Harrington answered. Only Reginald and I and Geoffrey for business matters. Geoffrey flushed. I didn't touch the safe. I was on the terrace. So you say, Colonel Fitzroy muttered. But those burned riddle drafts in your room, care to explain? They were guesses. Geoffrey snapped. I was trying to help Uncle. Poirot's gaze swept the room. The safe suggests knowledge, intimacy. The poison, preparation. The riddles, a mind that revels in control. We seek a clever adversary. Jap interrupted. We've got results from the glass cyanide confirmed, mixed with the whiskey. No prints but Sir Reginald's. The decanter's clean, too. Poirot nodded. The poison was added to the glass alone. A precise act in a brief window. Mrs. Beaumont spoke up, her voice sharp. You're suggesting one of us slipped it in while he was in the study? Or before, Poirot said. Let us consider the movements. Monsieur Hastings. You saw Sir Reginald pour his drink? Yes, Hastings confirmed. From the decanter in the library. Before he left, and no one approached the glass. After, not that I saw, Hastings admitted. But we were focused on the cards. Poirot paced, his king clicking softly. The study was locked from the inside, yes. Yet the killer entered, poisoned, and left, leaving a note. or the poison was administered earlier, in plain sight. Tell me, Madam Harrington, of your husband's habits with his whiskey. He often took a glass to the study, she said. He kept a spare decanter there, but he used the library one last night. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the scarab amulet on the desk significant? It was new, she replied, from his latest Egyptian shipment. He was proud of it, a symbol. Perhaps, Poirot mused. Of death, betrayal, the beetle of the note. The room grew tense. Miss Langley broke the silence. Monsieur, Poirot, you suspect one of us, don't you? I suspect everyone, mademoiselle, Poirot said calmly. Until the little gray cells reveal otherwise, Jab, growing impatient, stood. Enough theorizing. We'll search the rooms again, and I want those riddle drafts analyzed. As the constables dispersed, Poirot drew Hastings aside. Mon ami, observe the faces. Fear, yes, but also calculation. Someone here is playing a game with Poirot. Hastings glanced at the group. Geoffrey's clenched fists, Miss Langley's watchful gaze, Dr. Thorne's calm demeanor, Mrs. Beaumont's tight lips, Colonel Fitzroy's scowl, Lady Harrington's quiet grief. Who do you think, Poirot? Poirot smiled faintly. Patience, Hastings. The truth lies in the contradictions, the riddles, the safe, the scarab they speak. We must listen. As the rain pattered against the windows, Poirot returned to his notebook, sketching connections. Only he could see, while the shadow of murder loomed larger over Harrington Manor. Chapter 5. The red herring's drizzle had thickened into a steady rain by early afternoon, cloaking Harrington Manor in a curtain of mist that seemed to deepen the sense of isolation. Inside the library, the atmosphere was no less oppressive. The guests, confined by Inspector Japp's orders, shifted uneasily under the weight of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, appeared almost serene, his small frame perched on the edge of an armchair, his notebook open on his lap. Captain Arthur Hastings watched his friend with a mixture of admiration and impatience, knowing that behind Poirot's calm exterior, the little gray cells were working furiously. Inspector Japp, his face etched with frustration, returned from overseeing the constable's latest search. We've turned up precious little, he announced, tossing a notebook onto the table. The burned papers in Mr. Harrington's room are illegible charred to bits. No cyanide found in any of the rooms, and the staff swear they saw nothing suspicious. This case is a proper tangle, Poirot. Poirot's mustache twitched. A tangle, mon ami. Non, it is a puzzle, and every puzzle has its solution. We must look beyond the obvious, for the killer wishes us to chase shadows. Hastings frowned. Shadows? You mean the riddles? Precisement, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. The riddles are not mere taunts, they are misdirection, designed to obscure the truth. But in their very complexity, they reveal the mind of the murderer. Let us consider the evidence anew. He rose, pacing slowly before the fireplace, where a low fire crackled. The guests, seated in a tense semicircle, watched him warily. Lady Harrington clutched her handkerchief, her eyes darting to Geoffrey, who sat with his head bowed, avoiding her gaze. Miss Victoria Langley's pen scratched softly in her notebook, while Dr. Elias Thorne polished his spectacles with deliberate calm. Mrs. Lydia Beaumont's lips were pressed into a thin line, and Colonel Marcus Fitzroy drummed his fingers impatiently on the arm of his chair. Poirot stopped, turning to face them. The note found in Sir Reginald's hand, "The clock strikes once for the fool who trusts," suggests a betrayal of trust. The note in the safe, "The beetle crawls where the sun sets," hiding the truth in darkness, points to something hidden, perhaps in the west. And the earlier riddle, as Madame Harrington recalled, "The shadow that follows the light betrays the dawn." implies a deception tied to beginnings or revelations. These are not random. They are clues to motive. Colonel Fitzroy snorted. Clues. They're gibberish. Man, the killer's toying with us. Or guiding us, Poirot countered softly. Let us examine the obvious suspect first, for it is often the obvious that misleads. Monsieur Geoffrey, you stand to inherit the estate. The burned papers in your room, the discrepancies in the business accounts most incriminating. Geoffrey's head snapped up, his face flushed. I've told you, I didn't touch the safe. And those papers were my attempts to understand the riddles. Uncle was worried about them. I was trying to help. Help? Mrs. Beaumont's voice was sharp. Or cover your tracks. Reginald told me you'd been reckless with the company funds. A motive, perhaps, to silence him. That's a lie. Geoffrey shot to his feet, his fists clenched. I loved my uncle. Lady Harrington's voice trembled. Please, Geoffrey. Lydia, don't accuse without proof. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. Comes Amos. Accusations without evidence are as useless as a clock without hands. Let us turn to another matter, the scarab amulet. Madame Harrington, you said it was new, from Egypt. Was it valuable? Very, she replied. Reginald paid a fortune for it. He believed it brought luck, though I thought it. Unselling. Poirot's eyes narrowed. In what way? It's history, she said hesitantly. The dealer in Cairo claimed it was from a tomb, cursed to bring misfortune to those who claimed it. Miss Langley looked up from her notebook. A curse? That's rather theatrical, don't you think? Yet fitting, Poirot mused. The beetle in the riddle, where the sun sets. In Egypt, the scarab is a symbol of rebirth, but also of secrets buried. Perhaps the amulet itself is a clue. Jab, growing restless, interjected. Enough about beetles. The cyanide's the key. Someone slipped it into his whiskey glass, and it wasn't done by magic. Dr. Thorne, you're the expert here. Could it have been disguised? Thorne nodded thoughtfully. Cyanide can be dissolved in liquid colorless, nearly tasteless, though it has a faint almond-like odor. In whiskey, it might go unnoticed, especially if Sir Reginald was distracted. Distracted by what? Hastings asked. By the papers he went to check, Poirot said, or by the killer, who entered the study unseen. But the door was locked, Colonel Fitzroy protested. Wilkins had to break it open. Poirot corrected gently. Wilkins said the door was ajar when he heard the cry. Sir Reginald locked it after entering. Perhaps, but the killer left it open. In their haste. Wilkins, standing by the door, nodded. That's right, sir. I assumed Sir Reginald left it ajar. But Poirot's gaze sharpened. Assumptions, Monsieur Wilkins, are dangerous. Tell me, did you serve the whiskey in the library? Yes, sir, Wilkins replied. I poured for everyone from the same decanter. Sir Reginald took his glass with him, and no one approached it after. Poirot pressed. Wilkins hesitated. I can't say for certain, sir. I was in and out, fetching trays. Poirot turned to the group. Then we have a window between 10:30, when Sir Reginald poured his drink, and 11 o'clock, when he was found. Someone had opportunity. Miss Langley spoke up, her voice steady. But why the riddles? If the killer wanted to escape notice, why? Leave clues, a question most pertinent, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The riddles are the killer's signature, their pride. They believe themselves cleverer than us all, even than Hercule Poirot. A constable entered, holding a small evidence bag. Sir, we found this in the garden, near the terrace. Caught in the hedge. He handed Jap a tiny glass vial, empty, but with a faint chemical scent. Jap sniffed it cautiously. Cyanide, I'd wager. Dropped in a hurry. Geoffrey's face paled. The terrace? I was there. But I swear. Enough. Jap snapped. You're not helping yourself, lad. Poirot examined the vial. His expression unreadable. Dropped. Yes, but deliberately, or another misdirection. The terrace is where Monsieur Geoffrey claims to have been. Convenient. I didn't do it. Geoffrey protested, his voice cracking. Lady Harrington rose, her face anguished. Stop this. Geoffrey wouldn't harm Reginald. He's family. Family, Poirot said softly, is often where betrayal cuts deepest. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy. Jab, seizing the moment, declared, We'll take young Harrington in for questioning. That vial's damning evidence. As the constables escorted a protesting Geoffrey away, Poirot drew Hastings aside. Mon ami, what do you make of this vial? It points to Geoffrey, Hastings said, frowning. But it's too neat, isn't it? Almost as if someone wanted it found. Exactament. Poirot's eyes sparkled. The red herring. Hastings. The killer plants it to divert us. Geoffrey is not our man or not yet. We must look elsewhere, to the one who moves in shadows, leaving riddles. Hastings glanced at the remaining guests. Miss Langley's pen had stilled, her eyes fixed on Poirot. Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his face impassive. Mrs. Beaumont whispered to Lady Harrington, who shook her head faintly. Colonel Fitzroy's scowl deepened. Poirot, Hastings murmured, Do you think the killer's still playing their game? Oh, yes, Poirot replied. And they watch us now, believing they are safe. But Hercule Poirot sees through the shadows. As the rain continued to fall, the library felt smaller, the walls closing in. The discovery of the vial had shifted suspicion. But Hastings sensed that Poirot was far from convinced. The riddles, the scarab, the poison all were pieces of a puzzle that only Poirot's meticulous mind could solve. Chapter 5. The red herring's drizzle had thickened into a steady rain by early afternoon, cloaking Harrington Manor in a curtain of mist that seemed to deepen the sense of isolation. Inside the library, the atmosphere was no less oppressive. The guests, confined by Inspector Japp's orders, shifted uneasily under the weight of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, appeared almost serene, his small frame perched on the edge of an armchair, his notebook open on his lap. Captain Arthur Hastings watched his friend with a mixture of admiration and impatience, knowing that behind Poirot's calm exterior, the little gray cells were working furiously. Inspector Japp, his face etched with frustration, returned from overseeing the constable's latest search. We've turned up precious little, he announced, tossing a notebook onto the table. The burned papers in Mr. Harrington's room are illegible charred to bits. No cyanide found in any of the rooms, and the staff swear they saw nothing suspicious. This case is a proper tangle, Poirot. Poirot's mustache twitched. A tangle, mon ami. Non, it is a puzzle, and every puzzle has its solution. We must look beyond the obvious, for the killer wishes us to chase shadows. Hastings frowned. Shadows? You mean the riddles? Precisement, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. The riddles are not mere taunts, they are misdirection, designed to obscure the truth. But in their very complexity, they reveal the mind of the murderer. Let us consider the evidence anew. He rose, pacing slowly before the fireplace, where a low fire crackled. The guests, seated in a tense semicircle, watched him warily. Lady Harrington clutched her handkerchief, her eyes darting to Geoffrey, who sat with his head bowed, avoiding her gaze. Miss Victoria Langley's pen scratched softly in her notebook, while Dr. Elias Thorne polished his spectacles with deliberate calm. Mrs. Lydia Beaumont's lips were pressed into a thin line, and Colonel Marcus Fitzroy drummed his fingers impatiently on the arm of his chair. Poirot stopped, turning to face them. The note found in Sir Reginald's hand, "The clock strikes once for the fool who trusts," suggests a betrayal of trust. The note in the safe, "The beetle crawls where the sun sets, hiding the truth in darkness," points to something hidden, perhaps in the west. And the earlier riddle, as Madame Harrington recalled, "The shadow that follows the light betrays the dawn," implies a deception tied to beginnings or revelations. These are not random. They are clues to motive. Colonel Fitzroy snorted. "Clues, they're gibberish. Man, the killer's toying with us. Or guiding us," Poirot countered softly. "Let us examine the obvious suspect first, for it is often the obvious that misleads. Monsieur Geoffrey, you stand to inherit the estate. The burned papers in your room, the discrepancies in the business accounts most incriminating." Geoffrey's head snapped up, his face flushed. "I've told you, I didn't touch the safe. And those papers were my attempts to understand the riddles. Uncle was worried about them. I was trying to help." "Help?" Mrs. Beaumont's voice was sharp. "Or cover your tracks. Reginald told me you'd been reckless with the company funds. A motive, perhaps, to silence him." "That's a lie." Geoffrey shot to his feet, his fists clenched. "I love my uncle." Lady Harrington's voice trembled. "Please, Geoffrey. Lydia, don't accuse without proof." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Calm, Ms. Amos. Accusations without evidence are as useless as a clock without hands. Let us turn to another matter, the scarab amulet. Madame Harrington, you said it was new, from Egypt. Was it valuable?" "Very," she replied. "Reginald paid a fortune for it. He believed it brought luck, though I thought it unselling." "Unselling?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "In what way?" "Its history," she said hesitantly. "The dealer in Cairo claimed it was from a tomb, cursed to bring misfortune to those who claimed it." Miss Langley looked up from her notebook. "A curse? That's rather theatrical, don't you think? Yet fitting," Poirot mused. "The beetle in the riddle, where the sun sets, in Egypt, the scarab is a symbol of rebirth, but also of secrets buried. Perhaps the amulet itself is a clue." Jab, growing restless, interjected. "Enough about beetles. The cyanide's the key. Someone slipped it into his whiskey glass, and it wasn't done by magic. Dr. Thorne, you're the expert here. Could it have been disguised?" Thorne nodded thoughtfully. "Cyanide can be dissolved in liquid, colorless, nearly tasteless, though it has a faint almond-like odor. In whiskey, it might go unnoticed, especially if Sir Reginald was distracted." "Distracted by what?" Hastings asked. "By the papers he went to check," Poirot said. "Or by the killer, who entered the study unseen." "But the door was locked," Colonel Fitzroy protested. "Wilkins had to break it open." Poirot corrected gently. "Wilkins said the door was ajar when he heard the cry. Sir Reginald locked it after entering." "Perhaps, but the killer left it open in their haste." Wilkins, standing by the door, nodded. "That's right, sir. I assumed Sir Reginald left it ajar." But Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Assumptions, Monsieur Wilkins, are dangerous. Tell me, did you serve the whiskey in the library?" "Yes, sir," Wilkins replied. "I poured for everyone from the same decanter. Sir Reginald took his glass with him, and no one approached it after." Poirot pressed. Wilkins hesitated. "I can't say for certain, sir. I was in and out, fetching trays." Poirot turned to the group. "Then we have a window between 10:30, when Sir Reginald poured his drink, and 11 o'clock, when he was found. Someone had opportunity." Miss Langley spoke up, her voice steady. But why the riddles? If the killer wanted to escape notice, why? Leave clues, a question most pertinent, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The riddles are the killer's signature, their pride. They believe themselves cleverer than us all, even in Hercule Poirot. A constable entered, holding a small evidence bag. Sir, we found this in the garden, near the terrace. Caught in the hedge. He handed Jap a tiny glass vial, empty, but with a faint chemical scent. Jap sniffed it cautiously. Cyanide, I'd wager. Dropped in a hurry. Geoffrey's face paled. The terrace? I was there. But I swear. Enough. Jap snapped. You're not helping yourself, lad. Poirot examined the vial. His expression unreadable. Dropped. Yes, but deliberately, or another misdirection. The terrace is where Monsieur Geoffrey claims to have been. Convenient? Non. I didn't do it. Geoffrey protested, his voice cracking. Lady Harrington rose, her face anguished. Stop this. Geoffrey wouldn't harm Reginald. He's family. Family, Poirot said softly, is often where betrayal cuts deepest. The room fell silent. The weight of his words hanging heavy, Jab, seizing the moment, declared, We'll take young Harrington in for questioning. That vial's damning evidence. As the constables escorted a protesting Geoffrey away, Poirot drew Hastings aside. Mon ami, what do you make of this vial? It points to Geoffrey, Hastings said, frowning. But it's too neat, isn't it? Almost as if someone wanted it found. Exactament. Poirot's eyes sparkled. The red herring. Hastings. The killer plants it to divert us. Geoffrey is not our man, or not yet. We must look elsewhere, to the one who moves in shadows, leaving riddles. Hastings glanced at the remaining guests. Miss Langley's pen had stilled, her eyes fixed on Poirot. Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his face impassive. Mrs. Beaumont whispered to Lady Harrington, who shook her head faintly. Colonel Fitzroy's scowl deepened. Poirot, Hastings murmured, Do you think the killer's still playing their game? Oh, yes, Poirot replied. And they watch us now, believing they are safe. But Hercule Poirot sees through the shadows. As the rain continued to fall, the library felt smaller, the walls closing in. The discovery of the vial had shifted suspicion, but Hastings sensed that Poirot was far from convinced. The riddles, the scarab, the poison all were pieces of a puzzle that only Poirot's meticulous mind could solve. Chapter 7, More lies surfacey. The rain had settled into a monotonous rhythm by late afternoon, drumming against the windows of Harrington Manor and deepening the sense of confinement. Within its walls, the library, now a battleground of whispered suspicions and guarded glances, felt smaller with each passing hour. Hercule Poirot, seated in his chosen armchair, his notebook a mosaic of cryptic sketches and notes, observed the guests with an air of quiet authority. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the fireplace, felt the weight of the unresolved murder pressing on them all. The air thick with secrets waiting to be pried open. Inspector Jab, his patience wearing thin, paced before the group. We're getting nowhere fast, he grumbled, glancing at Poirot. Geoffrey Harrington's at the station, denying everything, but that vial's got his name written all over it. What's your take, Poirot? You've been awfully quiet. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of amusement or irritation Hastings could never quite tell. Quiet, mon ami, non. I listen. The truth speaks in the silences, in the hesitations, and today, I sense lies beginning to unravel. The guests stiffened, their eyes darting to one another. Lady Harrington, her face drawn, clutched her handkerchief, as if it were a lifeline. Mrs. Lydia Beaumont sat with rigid poise, her gloved hands folded tightly. Miss Victoria Langley, her notebook now closed, watched Poirot with a mix of curiosity and wariness. Dr. Elias Thorne polished his spectacles yet again, while Colonel Marcus Fitzroy's scowl deepened, his fingers tapping an impatient rhythm. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, his cane tapping softly as he addressed the room. Ms. Amos, the murderer among us is clever, but not infallible. The riddles, the poison, the scare, they are threads in a tapestry of deception. But now, a new thread emerges. The lie someone here conceals a truth that will illuminate the crime. Mrs. Beaumont's voice was sharp. You speak in riddles. Yourself, Monsieur Poirot. If you have accusations, make them plain. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Very well, madam. Let us speak of motives. Sir Reginald was a wealthy man. His business a web of connections, debts, investments, rivalries. Each of you had ties to him. Let us explore these ties, non. He turned to Colonel Fitzroy. You, Colonel, lent Sir Reginald £5,000, a significant sum. Yet you claim there was no quarrel. Is this true? Fitzroy's ruddy face reddened further. Of course it's true. Reginald was repaying me steadily. We were friends, damn it. Friends, Poirot echoed softly. Yet friends can harbor resentments. Did Sir Reginald ever speak of altering his will? Fitzroy hesitated, his eyes flickering. He mentioned it in passing. Said he was revising it to provide for Evelyn and Geoffrey. I thought nothing of it. Lady Harrington gasped softly. Reginald did revise his will. 2 weeks ago, he told me he wanted to ensure Geoffrey's future, but also to settle old debts. Poirot's gaze shifted to Mrs. Beaumont. And you, madam, had financial dealings with Sir Reginald. A debt, you said. How substantial? Mrs. Beaumont's lips tightened. A private matter. He invested in my late husband's estate, as I told you. He sought repayment recently, £20,000. I was arranging it. 20,000. Colonel Fitzroy exclaimed. Good Lord, Lydia. That's a fortune. It was business. She snapped. Nothing sinister. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet Sir Reginald pressed for repayment. Did this cause friction? Mrs. Beaumont hesitated, then shook her head. No, we were civil. Poirot turned to Miss Langley, who sat quietly, her eyes sharp. Mademoiselle, you are observant, a writer of motives. Did you notice tension between Sir Reginald and any guest? Miss Langley's fingers tightened on her notebook. I sensed unease. At dinner, Sir Reginald and Geoffrey argued briefly about the business. It was fleeting, but heated. Lady Harrington's voice broke. Geoffrey loved Reginald. It was a disagreement, nothing more. Perhaps, Poirot said, but disagreements can fester. And you, Dr. Thorne, with your knowledge of poisons, did Sir Reginald ever consult you about his health? Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his tone calm. He complained of fatigue recently. I prescribed rest and a tonic. Nothing serious. Cyanide is no tonic, Poirot said dryly. Yet your expertise is notable. And your travels in India, did you encounter cyanide there? Thorne's eyes flickered. As I said, it's used in various industries. But I had no access to it here. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Let us turn to the mirror. In the hall, the smudge, the note, the mirror reflects the lie, but shudders at the truth. Inspector, have the fingerprints been analyzed? Jab nodded, producing a report. The smudge yielded partial prints to smudged for identification. But we found another clue, a hairpin, caught in the carpet near the study door. A hairpin. The room stilled. Lady Harrington touched her hair instinctively, as did Mrs. Beaumont. Miss Langley's was bobbed, unsecured by pins. A woman's hairpin, Jap said, eyeing the ladies. Care to explain? Lady Harrington's voice trembled. I was in the hall earlier that evening, adjusting my hair before dinner. It could be mine. Mrs. Beaumont's eyes flashed. Or mine. I pinned my hair before retiring. It's hardly evidence. Poirot's gaze lingered on them. Yet it was near the study. At the time of the murder. A small detail, but significant. And the mere someone paused there, watching, perhaps listening. Colonel Fitzroy growled. This is absurd. Hairpins, smudges, you're grasping at straws, Poirot. Colonel, Poirot said sharply. I grasp at truth. And now, a lie has surfaced. One of you has concealed a connection to Sir Reginald, a secret that drove this murder. The room fell silent, the accusation hanging heavy. Then Miss Langley spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Monsieur Poirot, there's something I haven't mentioned. It may be nothing, but I saw Mrs. Beaumont in the hall, near the study, before dinner. She was holding an envelope, and she looked distressed. Mrs. Beaumont's face paled. Victoria, how dare you? Is it true, madam? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Mrs. Beaumont hesitated, her composure cracking. I was delivering a letter to Reginald. A private matter, about our financial arrangements. I slipped it under his study door. A letter, Poirot said. Yet no such letter was found. Did it contain a riddle? Perhaps no. She snapped. It was business. I swear it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. We shall see, Inspector. I suggest a search for this letter. And Wilkins, tell me, did you see Mrs. Beaumont in the hall? Wilkins, caught off guard, nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Before dinner, as Miss Langley said. I thought nothing of it. The revelation sent a ripple through the group. Lady Harrington's eyes widened. Lydia, what aren't you telling? U.S. Mrs. Beaumont's voice was icy. Nothing that concerns this murder. I won't be slandered. Poirot raised a hand. Enough. The lie is exposed, but the truth remains hidden. We must dig deeper into the will, the deads, the riddles. As Jap ordered another search for the letter, Poirot drew Hastings aside. Mon ami, the hairpin, the letter, these are not accidents. The killer is weaving a web, but it frays. Mrs. Beaumont conceals something. But is it murder? Hastings frowned. She's hiding a motive, surely. That debt, £20,000. It's enormous. Poirot said. But motive alone is not enough. The killer is precise. Calculating. The hairpin suggests a woman, yet the riddles suggest a mind both poetic and ruthless. Observe. Hastings, the cracks in their stories widen. As the rain battered the manor, the guests dispersed under Jap's watchful eye, each carrying their secrets. Poirot returned to his notebook, sketching a new diagram, a hairpin, a mirror, a beetle. The net was tightening, but the killer's identity remained just out of reach. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point. Relentless rain had turned the grounds of Harrington Manor into a sodden quagmire, mirroring the heavy atmosphere within the library. By evening, the tension among the guests had reached a breaking point. Each face etched with strain as the shadow of Sir Reginald Harrington's murder loomed larger. Hercule Poirot, seated in his armchair with his notebook now filled with meticulous diagrams, seemed the only calm presence in the room. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the window, watched the droplets streak down the glass, his mind racing with the revelations of the day, the hairpin, Mrs. Beaumont's mysterious letter, and the ever-present riddles that taunted them all. Inspector Jap, his patience fraying, returned from a fruitless search for the letter Mrs. Beaumont claimed to have slipped under the study door. Nothing, he growled, tossing his hat onto a side table. Not a trace of it in the study or anywhere else. Either it never existed, or someone's covering their tracks. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching slightly. The absence of the letter, mon ami, is as telling as its presence would have been. It suggests either Madame Beaumont lies, or the killer removed it. Both possibilities intrigue Hercule Poirot. Mrs. Beaumont, seated rigidly on a settee, bristled at the implication. "I've told you the truth, Monsieur Poirot. I wrote to Reginald about our financial matters. If it's gone, someone else took it." Lady Harrington, her face pale and drawn, looked at her friend with a mix of sorrow and suspicion. "Lydia, why didn't you tell me? Reginald never mentioned any letter." Mrs. Beaumont's lips tightened, but before she could respond, Miss Victoria Langley, who had been unusually quiet, set her notebook aside and stood. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with a sudden intensity that drew every eye. "Enough of this dancing around the truth," she said, her eyes blazing. "I can't bear it any longer. I know something I've kept to myself, and it's eating me alive." The room stilled, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Mademoiselle Langley, what is this truth you have withheld?" Victoria took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly. "It's about Geoffrey. I saw him with Sir Reginald in the study. The day before the murder, they were arguing fiercely. I was passing by, returning from the garden, and the door was ajar. I heard Sir Reginald say something about cutting you out and no more chances. Geoffrey was pleading, saying he'd fix everything." Lady Harrington gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Victoria, why didn't you say this sooner?" "I didn't want to believe it meant anything," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "Geoffrey's my friend. I thought it was just a family quarrel. But after the murder and the vial on the terrace, I couldn't stay silent." Mrs. Beaumont's eyes narrowed. "Convenient, Miss Langley, to point fingers at Geoffrey now that he's not here to defend himself." Colonel Fitzroy, his face red with indignation, slammed a fist on the arm of his chair. "This is outrageous. The boy's already under suspicion, and now you pile on more. What's your game?" "Girl," Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. Mademoiselle Langley, this is a grave revelation. Can you recall the exact words?" Victoria nodded, her eyes distant. "Sir Reginald said, 'You've had your chance, Geoffrey. I won't let you ruin us. You're out of the will unless you prove yourself.' Geoffrey replied, 'Give me time, uncle. I swear I'll make it right.' It was desperate." Hastings, stunned, glanced at Poirot. "That sounds like a motive, Poirot. If Sir Reginald was cutting Geoffrey out of the will, Hastings," Poirot said softly. "A motive, indeed. But motives are like shadows, many cast them. But only one is the killer." He turned to the group. "This argument suggests Sir Reginald distrusted his nephew. Yet the vial. The riddles, these are not the work of a desperate young man. They are calculated, poetic." Dr. Elias Thorne, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice measured. "Monsieur Poirot, if I may, as a physician, I've seen how desperation can drive people to act out of character. Geoffrey's youth and impulsiveness could explain the vial, but the riddles, they seem too sophisticated." "Precisely," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The killer is a mind of subtlety, weaving a web of clues to both conceal and reveal. The vial is crude, the riddles refined. We must reconcile this contradiction." Job, rubbing his chin, looked skeptical. "You're saying Geoffrey's not our man, despite the vial. The argument, the inheritance?" "I say nothing yet," Poirot replied. "But I listen. And now, Mademoiselle Langley's confession opens. A new door. Let us explore it. He turned to Lady Harrington. Madam, you knew of the will's revision. Did Sir Reginald mention disinheriting Geoffrey? Lady Harrington's eyes filled with tears. He was frustrated with Geoffrey's handling of the business. There were losses. Reginald wanted to protect the estate, but he loved Geoffrey. He hoped to spur him to responsibility, not cast him out. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And the safe, where the will was kept, who else knew the combination? Only Reginald and I, she said, and Geoffrey, as I told you. But he wouldn't. Enough, Colonel Fitzroy interrupted. This is all speculation. What about that hairpin? You're ignoring the women here. Poirot's gaze flicked to the colonel. The hairpin. A clue, but not definitive. It could belong to Madame Harrington or Madame Beaumont or even a maid. We must not leap to conclusions. Mrs. Beaumont, her composure strained, spoke sharply. You keep circling, monsieur. Poirot, but you've yet to accuse anyone. If not Geoffrey, then who? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Patience, madame. The truth emerges when the heart breaks, as Mademoiselle Langley's has. Let us now consider the mirror. The note. The mirror reflects the lie, but shudders at the truth. I propose we examine it again. The group, reluctant but compelled, followed Poirot to the hall. The gilded mirror gleamed under the chandelier's light, its smudge still visible. Poirot ran a finger along the frame, pausing at a small scratch near the base. This scratch, he said, is recent. Not a casual mark, but deliberate. A signal. Perhaps. Japp frowned. A signal. For what? For the killer, Poirot said softly. Or to the killer. The mirror is a witness, reflecting those who pass. Someone stood here, marking their presence. Miss Langley, her voice steadier now, ventured. Could it be a literal clue? The mirror reflecting someone's? Lie like a false alibi? Brava, mademoiselle, Poirot said. You think like a novelist. But the lie is deeper. I suspect a secret of the heart. As they returned to the library, a constable rushed in, breathless. Inspector, we found something in the servants' quarters, a bottle of prussic acid, hidden in a maid's trunk. The room erupted in gasps. Wilkins, pale, stepped forward. That's impossible, sir. Our staff are loyal. Whose trunk? Japp demanded. Mary, the housemaid, the constable replied. She's in tears. Swears she knows nothing about it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Bring her here. Mary, a young woman with red-rimmed eyes, was led in, trembling. I didn't do it. Sir, I swear. I have never seen that bottle before. Poirot studied her, his gaze softening. Calm yourself. Mademoiselle, tell me, do you ever use hairpins? Mary nodded, touching her cap. Yes, sir, like the one you found. And do you pass the mirror in the hall often? Every day, sir, when I clean. Poirot turned to Japp. Another red herring. Perhaps the bottle is too convenient, like the vial. The killer plants evidence to confuse us, as Mary was. Led away, still protesting her innocence, the guests exchanged uneasy glances. Victoria's confession had cracked the facade of unity, and the discovery of the prussic acid deepened the web of suspicion. Poirot, undeterred, returned to his notebook, sketching a new line. A mirror, a hairpin, a bottle. Hastings whispered, Poirot. This is getting murkier. Victoria's story, the maid's bottle who's telling the truth. Truth, mon ami, Poirot said, is like a mirror. It reflects, but it also distorts. Someone here has shattered their silence, and soon the whole truth will follow. The Rain continued, and the manor felt like a cage, its secrets clawing at the surface, ready to break free. Chapter 9. The trapped rain had finally eased by the evening of the second day at Harrington Manor, leaving behind a damp chill that seeped into the very walls of the library. The flickering fire did little to warm the atmosphere, which crackled with tension as the guests sat under the watchful eyes of Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the bookshelves, felt the weight of the mounting evidence: the vial, the hairpin, the prussic acid bottle, and Victoria Langley's confession about Geoffrey's argument with Sir Reginald. Each clue seemed to point in a different direction, yet Poirot's calm demeanor suggested he was closing in on the truth. Poirot, his small frame radiating quiet authority, closed his notebook with a deliberate snap and rose from his armchair. "Miss Amos," he announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The time has come to lay a trap for a murderer. The riddles, the clues, the lies, they form a pattern, and Hercule Poirot sees it clearly. Tonight, we shall gather all in this room, and the killer will reveal themselves not by confession, but by their actions." Inspector Japp, leaning against the mantelpiece, raised an eyebrow. "A trap, Poirot. You've got something up your sleeve, haven't you? Care to share?" Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Patience, mon ami. The trap is simple. We recreate the conditions of the murder. We shall dine as you did that night in the dining room, with whiskey served from the same decanter. I have instructed Wilkins to prepare the table precisely as before. Each of you will take your place, and we shall observe." Lady Harrington, her face pale, clutched her handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot, is this necessary? It feels ghoulish." "Necessary, Madame," Poirot said gently, "to stir the conscience of the guilty. The killer is among us, watching, calculating. They will betray themselves under pressure." Mrs. Lydia Beaumont's voice was sharp. "This is theatrical nonsense. You can't expect us to play along with such a charade." "Yet you will, Madame," Poirot said, his tone firm. "For to refuse is to invite suspicion." Colonel Marcus Fitzroy grumbled. "I've had enough of this. Let's get it over with." Miss Victoria Langley, her eyes still red from her earlier confession, nodded slowly. "If it helps find the truth, I'll do it." Dr. Elias Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his expression unreadable. "A psychological experiment, Monsieur Poirot." "I'm intrigued." Hastings, catching Poirot's eye, whispered, "What are you hoping to achieve, Poirot? The killer's not going to confess over dinner. Non, Hastings." Poirot murmured, "But they will react. The guilty cannot resist the stage when the spotlight falls upon them. Observe their hands, their eyes, their words." As the group moved to the dining room, Wilkins and the remaining staff had set the table with meticulous care, replicating the night of the murder. The crystal chandelier cast a warm glow over the silverware. The same pheasant dish was served, and the whiskey decanter sat prominently on a sideboard. Poirot had ensured Geoffrey Harrington, released from questioning due to lack of conclusive evidence, was present, his face drawn but defiant. The dinner began in strained silence, the clank of cutlery and the soft ticking of the dining room clock the only sounds. Poirot, seated at one end, sipped his wine, his eyes darting from face to face. Hastings, opposite him, noted the guests' behaviors, Lady Harrington's trembling hands, Mrs. Beaumont's rigid posture, Geoffrey's nervous glances at Victoria, Dr. Thorne's calm detachment, Colonel Fitzroy's brusque movements, and Victoria's hesitant sips of water. Poirot raised his glass, breaking the silence. A toast. Miss Amos, to truth, to Sir Reginald, whose trust was betrayed, and to the riddles that guide us to his killer. The guests murmured their assent, though their expressions varied: skepticism, fear, curiosity. As Wilkins poured whiskey from the decanter, Poirot watched closely. The whiskey, he said, was Sir Reginald's last drink. Let us imagine he is here, pouring his glass, unaware of the poison within. Mrs. Beaumont's hand froze mid-motion, her glass clinking against the table. This is morbid, she snapped. Yet necessary, Poirot replied. Let us recall the riddles. The first is silent, the second a key. Together they unlock what you cannot see. The second, the clock strikes once for the fool who trusts. The third, the beetle crawls where the sun sets, hiding the truth in darkness. And the fourth, the mirror reflects the lie, but shudders at the truth. What do they tell us? Colonel Fitzroy snorted. They tell us the killer's a blasted poet, wasting our time. Non, Colonel, Poirot said sharply. They tell us of a mind obsessed with control, with symbolism. The scarab, the mirror, the clock all point to a betrayal planned with care. Victoria's voice was soft. The mirror, could it mean someone who hides their true self, like a facade? Brava, mademoiselle, Poirot said. And the beetle, crawling west, perhaps a reference to the West Wing, where secrets are kept. Geoffrey shifted uncomfortably. The West Wing's just guest rooms. Nothing sinister there. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Yet the safe was opened, the will tampered with. Someone knew its secrets. As the meal progressed, Poirot steered the conversation to the night of the murder, probing each guest's movements. Madame Harrington, you were at bridge. Did you notice Sir Reginald's glass before he left? Lady Harrington frowned. I think it was on the side table, near the decanter. I didn't see anyone touch it. And you, Monsieur Thorne? Poirot asked. You were in the cloakroom. A convenient absence. Non. Thorne's eyes narrowed. I washed my hands, as I said. I wasn't gone long. Poirot turned to Mrs. Beaumont. And your letter, Madam, which vanished. Was it truly about business or something more personal? Mrs. Beaumont's face flushed. I have told you. It was financial. Stop insinuating otherwise. The tension peaked as Wilkins refilled the whiskey glasses. Suddenly, Colonel Fitzroy stood, his face red. This is intolerable. You're accusing us all, Poirot, but you've got nothing solid. I demand you. His words were cut off by a sharp gasp from Victoria. Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. I thought I saw something, she stammered, pointing to the doorway. All eyes turned, but the hall was empty, the gilded mirror reflecting only the flickering chandelier. Poirot sprang to his feet, his voice urgent. What did you see, mademoiselle? A shadow, she whispered. Moving past the mirror, Jap rushed to the hall, constables in tow, but returned shaking his head. Nothing. Just the wind. Maybe. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Non-inspector. Not the wind. The killer is nervous, watching us. The trap is working. He turned to the group, his voice low and commanding. Someone here knows the truth. The mirror has seen you. The scarab has marked you. And the clock counts your time. Speak now, or the net tightens. The room was silent, save for the ticking clock. Then Mrs. Beaumont stood, her face pale but resolute. Enough, monsieur. Poirot. I must confess, the letter wasn't just about money. It was a warning. Reginald was blackmailing me. The room erupted in gasps. Lady Harrington's eyes widened. Blackmail, Lydia. What are you saying? Mrs. Beaumont's voice trembled. He knew about an indiscretion from years ago. He threatened to expose me unless I paid him not just the debt, but more. I wrote to beg him to stop. Poirot's gaze was piercing. And did you poison him to silence him? No, she cried. I swear I didn't. Poirot nodded slowly. We shall see, madam. The trap has caught a truth, but not the whole truth. The killer is close, very close. As the guests dispersed, shaken by Mrs. Beaumont's revelation, Poirot drew Hastings aside. Mon ami, the trap has worked. The killer feels the pressure, and their mask slips. Observe the shadow in the hall. The shattered glass, the end, is near. Hastings, his heart pounding, whispered, You think it's her, Poirot? Mrs. Beaumont, perhaps, Poirot said. Or perhaps she is another piece in the puzzle. The mirror will shatter soon, and the truth will stand revealed. The manor, now shrouded in darkness, felt like a stage set for the final act, with Poirot directing the players toward an inevitable climax. Chapter 10. The final revelation. Night had deepened over Harrington Manor, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and the lingering tension of secrets laid bare. The dining room, where Hercule Poirot's trap had stirred raw emotions, now stood empty. The shattered glass from Victoria Langley's outburst swept away by a trembling Wilkins. In the library, the guests reconvened under the dim glow of the chandelier, their faces pale and drawn. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near Poirot, felt the weight of the moment. This was the hour when the Belgian detective's little gray cells would weave the threads of the case into a tapestry of truth. Hercule Poirot stood, his small frame commanding the room with quiet authority. His notebook, now a labyrinth of sketches, scarabs, mirrors, clocks, and hairpins, lay closed on the table. Inspector Japp, his skepticism tempered by anticipation, leaned against the fireplace, arms crossed. The guests, Lady Harrington, Mrs. Beaumont, Miss Langley, Dr. Thorne, Colonel Fitzroy, and a newly returned Geoffrey Harrington, sat in a tense semicircle, their eyes fixed on Poirot. Miss Amos, Poirot began, his voice steady and clear. The time has come to unmask the murderer of Sir Reginald Harrington. The riddles, the poison, the clues, they have led us through a maze of deception, but Hercule Poirot sees the path clearly. Tonight, the mirror of truth will shatter the lies. Lady Harrington's voice trembled. Please, Monsieur Poirot, and this nightmare. Poirot inclined his head. I shall, madam. Let us begin with the facts. Sir Reginald was poisoned with cyanide, administered in his whiskey glass between 10:30 and 11 p.m. The study door was locked, then found ajar. The safe was opened, papers missing, and riddles left to taunt us. A vial of cyanide on the terrace, a hairpin by the study, a bottle of prussic acid in a maid's trunk. These are the threads. But which are truth, and which are deception? Japp shifted impatiently. Get to it, Poirot. You said the vial points to Geoffrey, but you don't believe it's him. Non-inspector. Poirot said, the vial is a red herring, placed to incriminate Monsieur Geoffrey. The burned papers in his room, the argument overheard by Mademoiselle Langley, these, too, are distractions. The true killer is subtler. Their mind a tapestry of calculation and pride. Geoffrey, his face haggard, leaned forward. Then who? Monsieur Poirot. I've been through hell for this. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Patience, monsieur. Let us unravel the riddles. The first is silent, the second a key. Together they unlock what you cannot see. The second, the clock strikes once for the fool who trusts. The third, the beetle crawls where the sun sets, hiding the truth in darkness. The fourth, the mirror reflects the lie, but shatters at the truth. These are not mere taunts, they are the killer's signature, revealing their motive and method. He paced slowly, his cane tapping. The scarab amulet, placed on the desk, points to Egypt. Sir Reginald's business, his wealth. The mirror in the hall, with its smudge and scratch, reflects those who pass, watching the study. The clock marks the moment of betrayal. And the poison cyanide, precise and swift, requires knowledge and access. Mrs. Beaumont's voice was sharp. You've said all this before, Monsieur Poirot. Who is it? Poirot turned to her, his gaze piercing. Madame Beaumont, you confessed to a letter. A warning about blackmail. A powerful motive, none. Yet, your story holds Sir Reginald's demands were financial, not fatal. You are not the killer. Her shoulders sagged slightly, relief mingling with suspicion. Then who? Poirot's gaze shifted to Dr. Elias Thorne, who sat calmly, his spectacles glinting. Dr. Thorne, you have knowledge of poisons from your travels in India. You were absent during the critical moments, claiming to wash your hands. A convenient alibi, but one we cannot disprove. Yet the riddles poetic, intricate, do not match your methodical nature. Thorne nodded, unperturbed. I've said I'm innocent. Poirot turned to Colonel Fitzroy. You, Colonel, lent Sir Reginald money, a debt he was repaying. But your temper, your indignation, perhaps you resented his success, his hold over you. Fitzroy's face reddened. Preposterous? I was his friend. We, Poirot said, and friends do not kill with such calculation. He paused before Miss Langley, whose eyes widened. Mademoiselle, your confession about Jeffreys. Argument was brave, but delayed. You write mysteries. You observe. Did you craft the riddles to weave your own story? Victoria paled. No, I only wanted to help. Poirot nodded. I believe you. Your heart is too open for such deceit. His gaze settled on Lady Harrington, who clutched her handkerchief, tears brimming. Madam, your grief is genuine, but your knowledge of the safe's combination and your presence in the hall, adjusting a hairpin, placed you near the crime. No, she cried. I loved Reginald. We, Poirot said softly, and love can blind, but not to murder. He turned, his eyes narrowing, to the one figure who had remained on the periphery. Wilkins, he said, his voice like a blade. The butler, ever present, ever unseen. You poured the whiskey. You heard the footsteps. You found the body. You have access to every room, every secret. Wilkins stiffened, his face paling. Sir, I'm loyal. I'd never loyal, Poirot interrupted. But to whom? Let us consider the riddles. The first is silent, a servant, unnoticed. The second a key, access to the house, the safe. Together they unlock what you cannot see, a motive hidden in plain sight. You, Wilkins, knew of Sir Reginald's blackmail, his debts, his will. You moved through the house, unseen, planting the vial, the bottle, the hairpin, all to confuse. The room gasped. Job stepped forward. Wilkins, the butler? That's a stretch, Poirot. Non-inspector, Poirot said. The mirror's scratch you made it, pausing to watch the study. The hairpin dropped from Mary's cap, which you took. The prussic acid, hidden in her trunk. And the riddles typed on Sir Reginald's own typewriter, which you used for household accounts. Wilkins' composure cracked, his hands trembling. You've no proof. Proof? Poirot said. The typewriter ribbon, inspector examine it. You will find traces of the riddles. And the safe opened with a combination you overheard, as Sir Reginald trusted you implicitly. Lady Harrington's voice broke. Wilkins. Why? Poirot's tone softened. Motive, madam. Wilkins served your husband for years. But Sir Reginald discovered Wilkins had been siphoning funds, small sums, unnoticed, until the Cairo shipment revealed discrepancies. Sir Reginald threatened exposure. Wilkins acted to protect himself, using cyanide from the estate's pest control supplies. Wilkins' face contorted. Lies? Enough. Poirot's voice was a whip. You betrayed the fool who trusted, left the beetle to mark your crime. and watch from the mirror. But the truth shatters your lies. Wilkins lunged for the door, but Japp's constables seized him. As he was led away, shouting denials, the room fell silent, the weight of revelation settling over them. Lady Harrington wept softly. I trusted him. Poirot bowed his head. Trust, madam, is the heart of this tragedy. Hastings, stunned, whispered, How did you know, Poirot? The little gray cells, mon ami, Poirot said. They see what others overlook. The silent servant, the hidden truth. As the manor quieted, the rain ceased, and the first stars appeared. The case was solved, but the scars of betrayal lingered in Harrington Manor. Chapter 11. The reflection. The drawing room at Ashwood Hall was bathed in the soft glow of the late afternoon sun, its golden rays filtering through the heavy velvet curtains and casting long shadows across the polished floor. The air was thick, with the scent of old books and the faint tang of wood polish, but an undercurrent of unease lingered, as though the very walls held their breath. Miss Jane Marple sat in her usual armchair by the window, her knitting needles clicking rhythmically, a delicate counterpoint to the tension that had gripped the household since Poirot's dramatic revelations in the library the previous evening. Her sharp eyes, bright and unyielding despite her age, flickered over the assembled company, though her expression remained serene, almost detached. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his brow furrowed, as he replayed the events of the prior night in his mind. The revelation that Lady Evelyn Ashwood, the poised and grieving widow, had been the architect of her husband's murder had stunned the room into silence. Poirot's meticulous unraveling of the cryptic messages, each a cleverly disguised taunt, left by Lady Evelyn to mislead the investigation, had been nothing short of genius. Yet, as Hastings glanced at Miss Marple, he sensed that her quiet presence held a wisdom that complemented Poirot's brilliance, a subtle understanding of human nature that had quietly guided their discussions. Miss Marple, Hastings ventured, breaking the silence, you've been remarkably quiet since last night. Surely you have some thoughts on the matter? Poirot's solution was extraordinary, but I confess I'm still reeling from it all. Miss Marple's needles paused, and she looked up, her gaze steady but kind. Oh, Captain Hastings, I am but an observer in these matters. Monsieur Poirot's mind is a marvel, is it not? So precise, so orderly, like a well-kept garden. But the heart, you see, is a wilder thing, full of tangled roots and hidden thorns. It is in understanding those tangles that we see the truth. Hastings frowned, puzzled by her metaphor. You mean Lady Evelyn's motives? Poirot laid it all out her affair with Dr. Langley, the financial ruin Sir Reginald's gambling had caused, her desperation to secure the estate. It was all there in the clues, the messages she left to throw us off. Indeed, Miss Marple replied, her voice soft but laced with conviction. But it is not only the clues that matter, Captain. It is the why behind them. Lady Evelyn was a proud woman, was she not? Proud and terribly afraid of losing her place in the world. That fear drove her to such a terrible act, but it also made her careless. She thought her cleverness would shield her, but cleverness without heart is a brittle thing. Poirot, who had been standing near the French doors, turned at this, his mustache twitching slightly as he regarded Miss Marple with a mixture of respect and curiosity. You speak of the heart, mademoiselle, and yet it is the mind that solves. The crime, the messages, the cipher in the garden, the misquoted poetry, the misplaced brooch pointed to Lady Evelyn's hand. Each was a piece of the puzzle, and the puzzle, it is complete. Miss Marple inclined her head, a faint smile playing at her lips. Oh, I quite agree, Monsieur Poirot. Your method is impeccable. But I cannot help but think of the village of St. Mary Mead, where I live. There, you see, we have our own little drama, smaller, perhaps, but no less telling. I once knew a woman, a Mrs. Eldridge, who seemed the picture of kindness. She baked scones for the church fete, tended her roses, and smiled at everyone. But she was hiding a secret. You see, a theft, a betrayal of trust. It was not the act itself that gave her away, but the way she avoided the eyes of those she wronged. Lady Evelyn, I think, was much the same. Her messages were clever, yes, but they were also her confession, written in the language of her guilt. Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. A confession, you say? That is an intriguing perspective, mademoiselle. You suggest that Lady Evelyn wished, perhaps unconsciously, to be discovered. Not wished, precisely, Miss Marple said, resuming her knitting. But the heart betrays itself. Does it not? She could not help but leave those messages, as if daring someone to see through her fade. And you, Monsieur Poirot, saw through it beautifully. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the two. But what of the others? Dr. Langley, for instance, he was her accomplice, after all. And poor Miss Clara, who nearly took the blame for it all. It's monstrous, really, how Lady Evelyn manipulated everyone. Monstrous, yes, Miss Marple agreed, but also very human. In my village, I have seen how fear and love and greed twist people into shapes they scarcely recognize. Dr. Langley loved Lady Evelyn, or thought he did, and that love made him blind to her schemes. Miss Clara, dear girl, was too trusting, too eager to believe in the goodness of those around her. And Sir Reginald, well, his own failings set this tragedy in motion, did they not? Poirot nodded slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. You are correct, mademoiselle. The crime, it is never one act alone, but a chain of choices, each leading to the next. Sir Reginald's gambling, Lady Evelyn's ambition, Dr. Langley's devotion, all were links in the chain. And yet, it is the duty of Hercule Poirot to see the chain for what it is and to break it with the truth. Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. And you do so with such elegance, Monsieur Poirot. I confess, I find your methods quite fascinating. In St. Mary Mead, we rely on gossip and observation. But you weave a tapestry of logic that is quite splendid to behold. Hastings chuckled, relaxing slightly. Well, I dare say you to make quite the pair. Poirot with his logic, and you, Miss Marple, with your, what did you call it, tangles of the heart. Miss Marple smiled modestly. Oh, I am only an old woman who notices things, Captain. But I find that people are much the same, whether in a grand house like Ashwood Hall or a quiet village like mine. They love, they hate, they hide, and in the end, they cannot help but reveal themselves. Poirot inclined his head, a gesture of deep respect. You are wise, mademoiselle, in your own way. The little gray cells, they are essential, but so, too, is the understanding of the human soul. Perhaps we are not so different, you and I. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of their words settling over them. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, and the distant sound of a groundskeeper's rake scraping the gravel path drifted through the open window. Hastings felt a pang of melancholy, as he often did at the close of a case. The truth had been uncovered. Justice would be served, but the cost, the broken trust, the shattered lives lingered like a shadow. What now, Poirot? He asked quietly. The police have taken Lady Evelyn and Dr. Langley. The household is in disarray. Do we simply leave? Poirot's expression softened, though his posture remained impeccable. We leave, mon ami, but we do not forget. The truth, it is our legacy. We have restored order, and that is enough. As for Ashwood Hall, it will heal in time. The human spirit, it is resilient, even in the face of tragedy. Miss Marple nodded, her needles clicking once more. Quite so, Monsieur Poirot. In St. Mary Mead, we say that time mends what sorrow breaks. The young Miss Clara will find her way, and the others well. They will learn to live with their truths. Hastings sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I suppose you're both right. Still, it's a grim business, this detecting. Grim. Perhaps, Poirot said, his voice firm but kind, but necessary. The world, it is full of disorder. Hastings, it is our task mine, and perhaps Mademoiselle Marple's to bring order where there is none. Miss Marple looked up, her eyes meeting Poirot's. For a moment, there was a silent understanding between them, two minds united by their shared pursuit of truth, though their methods differed. Then, with a gentle smile, she returned to her knitting, and Poirot turned to the window, gazing out at the fading light. Come, Hastings, he said at last. It is time to depart. The train to London awaits, and Hercule Poirot, he has a craving for a quiet evening and a tisane. As they left the drawing room, Miss Marple's voice called after them, soft but clear. Do take care, gentlemen. And if you ever find yourselves in St. Mary Mead, I shall be delighted to offer you tea. Poirot paused, turning to offer her a small bow. And I, mademoiselle, would be honored to accept. With that, they stepped into the hall, the echoes of their footsteps fading into the quiet of Ashwood Hall. Behind them, Miss Marple sat alone, her knitting a steady rhythm, her mind already turning to the next small mystery that might cross her path. Chapter 12. The lingering doubt train to London clattered rhythmically over the tracks, its wheels humming a steady cadence as the English countryside blurred past the windows. Inside the first-class carriage, Hercule Poirot sat with his hands folded neatly in his lap, his eyes half closed. Though Captain Hastings knew better than to assume his friend was resting, the little Belgian detective's mind was never idle, and the case at Ashwood Hall, though resolved, seemed to linger in the air between them like a faint mist. Hastings leaned back in his seat, his gaze fixed on the rolling hills outside. The dramatic confrontation in the library, where Poirot had laid bare Lady Evelyn's guilt, replayed in his mind. The cryptic messages the cipher carved into the garden bench, the misquoted line of poetry in Sir Reginald's study, the brooch, deliberately placed in Miss Clara's room, had all been unraveled with Poirot's characteristic precision. Yet, something nagged at Hastings, a loose thread in the tapestry of the case that he could not quite grasp. Poirot, he said at last, turning to his friend, you're awfully quiet. Are you quite satisfied with how things turned out, lady? Evelyn and Dr. Langley are in custody. The truth is out. And yet, I can't shake the feeling that we've missed something. Poirot opened his eyes, his mustache twitching slightly as he regarded Hastings with a mixture of amusement and patience. Mon ami, you are troubled, as always, by the shadows of doubt. But rest assured, the case is complete. The evidence, it was clear Lady Evelyn's motive, her opportunity, her cunning. The messages, they were her undoing. Non. What is it that troubles you? Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. It's just, well, it all fits, I grant you. But what about young Robert Ashwood? Sir Reginald's nephew, I mean. He was so quiet during the investigation, always lurking in the background. And those odd comments he made about the estate, about how it should have been his. Don't you think he might have had a hand in things? Perhaps not the murder itself, but something. Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest, though his expression remained composed. Robert Ashwood, he mused, tapping a finger against his knee. A curious figure. reserved, watchful, with a certain bitterness in his heart. But Hastings, consider this. A man with a motive does not always act upon it. Robert's resentment toward his uncle was real, but the evidence it points only to Lady Evelyn and her accomplice, Dr. Langley, to suspect Robert without proof. That is to fall into the trap of the red herring. Hastings sighed, unconvinced. I suppose you're right. But there was something in his eyes, Poirot, a kind of suppressed anger. And that business with the missing ledger from Sir Reginald's study, nobody ever explained that properly. Couldn't it have been Robert trying to cover up some financial irregularity? Poirot tilted his head, his gaze drifting to the window as if searching the countryside for answers. The ledger, he said softly. A small detail, but one that nags at you, Hastings. Very well. Let us consider it. The ledger, it was mentioned by the butler, Mr. Grayson, as containing Sir Reginald's private accounts. It vanished the night of the murder, yet no trace of it was found in Lady Evelyn's possession. You suggest Robert may have taken it. But why? To hide his own misdeeds, or perhaps to expose those of his uncle. Exactly, Hastings said, leaning forward. What if Robert knew about Sir Reginald's gambling debts and thought he could use the ledger to secure his claim to the estate? He's the heir, after all, now that Sir Reginald is gone. Maybe he wasn't involved in the murder, but he saw an opportunity to muddy the waters. Poirot nodded slowly, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. An interesting hypothesis. Mon ami, but let us apply the little gray cells. If Robert took the ledger, where is it now? We searched his rooms, the grounds, the library, nothing. And consider his behavior. He is a young man of caution, not action. To steal a ledger, to risk discovery, that requires a boldness he did, not display. No, Hastings, I believe the ledger's disappearance is connected to Lady Evelyn's plan. Perhaps she destroyed it to conceal the full extent of Sir Reginald's ruin, which would have exposed her motive further. Hastings leaned back, still not entirely satisfied. You may be right, Poirot, but I can't help feeling we've let something slip through our fingers. And what about Miss Marple? She seemed so perceptive. The way she spoke about Lady Evelyn's guilt, as if she saw something we didn't. Do you think she noticed something about Robert? Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Mademoiselle Marple is a remarkable woman, Hastings. Her observations, they are rooted in the heart, in the patterns of human behavior. She sees what others miss because she looks not only at the facts but at the people behind them. But in this case, I believe her insights aligned with mine. Lady Evelyn's guilt was written not only in the clues, but in her demeanor, the way she carried herself, the way she spoke of her husband. Miss Marple saw this, as did I. Hastings nodded, though his unease remained. I suppose so. But I'd feel better if we could tie up that loose end about the ledger. It's the one piece that doesn't quite fit. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment, he seemed lost in thought. Then, with a sudden decisiveness, he sat up straighter. Very well, Hastings. Your instincts, they are not without merit. When we return to London, I shall make inquiries. The police, they may yet find the ledger in their search of Ashwood Hall. And if it reveals anything of Robert Ashwood's involvement, we shall know. But for now, let us not chase shadows. The case, it is solved. Lady Evelyn and Dr. Langley, they will face justice. The train lurched slightly as it rounded a bend, and Hastings glanced out the window again, his thoughts still tangled. The countryside was giving way to the outskirts of London, the green fields replaced by the gray sprawl of the city. He felt a pang of relief at the thought of returning to familiar ground, but the nagging doubt about Robert Ashwood lingered. Poirot, he said after a pause, Do you ever wonder if we've got it wrong? I mean, you're always so certain. But what if there's more to it? What if someone else was pulling strings behind Lady Evelyn? Poirot's expression softened, and he placed a hand on Hastings' arm. Mon cher Hastings, doubt is the companion of every detective. It is what drives us to seek the truth. But we must trust in the method, in the order of the mind. The little gray cells. They do not fail me. And in this case, they tell me that Lady Evelyn's crime was her own, driven by her ambition and fear. Robert Ashwood may have his secrets, but they are not the secrets of this murder. Hastings managed a small smile, comforted by Poirot's certainty. You're probably right, as usual. I just hope that Ledger turns up. It'd put my mind at ease. Poirot chuckled softly. Patience, mon ami. The truth. It has a way of revealing itself. For now, let us enjoy the journey. A good tisane awaits us in London, and perhaps a quiet evening to restore the balance of Hercule Poirot. As the train carried them closer to the city, Hastings leaned back, his thoughts still circling the case. The mystery of Ashwood Hall was solved, but the lingering doubt about Robert Ashwood and the missing ledger cast a faint shadow over his mind. He glanced at Poirot, who had closed his eyes again, a serene smile on his face. Whatever secrets remained, Hastings knew that Poirot's little gray cells would uncover them in time. For now, the rhythm of the train and the promise of London were enough. Chapter 13. The unexpected letter. The London air was crisp as Hercule Poirot, and Captain Hastings stepped off the train at Paddington Station. The bustle of porters and passengers a stark contrast to the somber quiet of Ashwood Hall. Poirot adjusted his hat with meticulous care, his eyes scanning the crowded platform as if already searching for the next puzzle. Hastings, still preoccupied with the unresolved question of the missing ledger, carried their small valise, his expression one of lingering unease. Back to civilization, E.H. Poirot, Hastings said, forcing a cheerful tone as they navigated through the throng. I must say, I'll be glad for a decent cup of tea and a night without cryptic messages or murder. Poirot's mustache twitched with amusement. Civilization, mon ami, is but a veneer over the chaos of human nature. But a tisane and a quiet evening will do us both good. The case, it is closed, and Hercule Poirot is satisfied. Hastings nodded, though his thoughts drifted back to Robert Ashwood's sullen demeanor and the ledger's mysterious disappearance. He was about to voice his concerns again when a young boy, no older than 12, darted through the crowd and thrust an envelope into Poirot's hand before vanishing into the sea of travelers. Quest excuse. Poirot murmured, his brow furrowing as he examined the envelope. It was plain, sealed with red wax, and addressed in a neat, unfamiliar hand to Monsieur Hercule Poirot. Hastings leaned closer, his curiosity piqued. Who could that be from? He asked. We've only just arrived. Surely it's not another case already? Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest as he carefully broke the seal and unfolded the letter within. His lips moved slightly as he read, and Hastings, unable to contain himself, peered over his shoulder. The letter was brief, written in the same precise hand. Monsieur Poirot, you have uncovered the truth of my uncle's death, and for that I am grateful. But there is more you must know. The ledger you seek is not lost. Meet me at the Café Royal, 8 o'clock this evening. Come alone. Discretion is paramount. Yours, Robert Ashwood. Hastings let out a low whistle. Good heavens, Poirot. It's from Robert. I knew there was something off about him. What do you make of it? Poirot folded the letter with deliberate care, slipping it into his pocket. It is curious, Hastings. Robert Ashwood, he was a shadow in our investigation. always present yet never central. This letter. It suggests he knows more than he revealed at Ashwood Hall. But why now? Why contact me after the case is closed? Perhaps he's guilty after all, Hastings said eagerly. Maybe he was working with Lady Evelyn and wants to confess or cover his tracks. You're not really going to meet him alone, are you? Poirot raised a hand, his expression calm but resolute. Patience, mon ami. Hercule Poirot does not leap to conclusions. Robert's motives, they are unclear, but his request for discretion intrigues me. The ledger, it has been a thorn in your side, has it not? Perhaps this meeting will provide the answers you seek. They hailed a cab and made their way to Poirot's flat in Whitehaven Mansions, where the familiar order of his meticulously ranged homes seemed to restore a sense of normalcy. Yet, as evening approached, Hastings could not shake his restlessness. At 7:30, Poirot, dressed in his impeccable black suit, prepared to leave for the Café Royal, his demeanor as composed as ever. I don't like it, Poirot, Hastings said, pacing the drawing room. It could be a trap. What if Robert's planning something? At least let me come along and keep watch from a distance. Poirot's eyes twinkled with affection. Your concern, it is touching, Hastings, but unnecessary. Hercule Poirot is always prepared. I shall meet young Robert, and I shall listen. If there is truth to be found, I will find it. Stay here, mon ami, and await my return. A tisane, perhaps, to calm your nerves? Hastings grumbled but relented, watching as Poirot departed into the London night. The Café Royal was a short distance away, its elegant facade glowing under the gaslights as Poirot arrived precisely at 8 inside. The air was warm with the scent of coffee and cigar smoke, the murmur of conversation blending with the clink of glasses. Robert Ashwood sat at a corner table, his lean frame hunched slightly, his eyes darting nervously as Poirot approached. Monsieur Ashwood, Poirot greeted, taking a seat with his usual grace. You have summoned me with some urgency. The ledger, you say, is not lost. Speak, and let us have no games. Robert's hands fidgeted with a napkin, his face pale but determined. Monsieur Poirot, I owe you an explanation. I didn't tell the whole truth at Ashwood Hall. I couldn't, not with the police and everyone watching. The ledger, I took it the night my uncle died. Poirot's expression remained impassive, though his eyes sharpened. You took it. And why, monsieur? To protect yourself, or to conceal another's crime? Robert swallowed hard, glancing around the café as if expecting eavesdroppers. It wasn't about the murder, not directly. My uncle, he was reckless. His gambling debts were ruinous, but there was more. The ledger contained records of loans he'd made loans to people who couldn't repay. Powerful people, monsieur. Poirot. I took it to protect the family name, to keep those secrets from coming out. I didn't know about Aunt Evelyn's plan until it was too late. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low and precise. And where is this ledger now? Robert hesitated, then reached into his coat and produced a slim, leather-bound book. Its edges worn but intact. Here, I've kept it hidden. I was going to destroy it, but after your revelations, I realized you'd see through any lie. You deserve to know the truth. Poirot took the ledger, his gloved fingers tracing its cover before opening it to scan the pages. Rows of figures and names meticulously recorded confirmed Robert's story. Sir Reginald had entangled himself with unsavory figures, leveraging his wealth for influence. But there was no mention of Lady Evelyn or Dr. Langley, only a glimpse into Sir Reginald's reckless financial dealings. You have done well to bring this to me, Poirot said at last, closing the ledger. But tell me, Monsieur Ashwood, why this secrecy? Why not reveal this at Ashwood Hall? Robert's eyes dropped to the table. I was ashamed and afraid. Some of the names in that ledger, they're not people you cross lightly. I thought if I kept it hidden, the scandal would die with my uncle. But I couldn't let you think I was part of the murder. I'm not a killer, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot studied him for a long moment, his gaze piercing yet not unkind. Non, you are not a killer, but you are a young man carrying a heavy burden. The ledger. It will go to the police, but with discretion. The truth, it must be served, but the honor of the Ashwood name need not be entirely destroyed. Robert nodded, relief flickering across his face. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I knew you'd understand. As Poirot rose to leave, he paused, his voice softening. One must always be careful, monsieur, when hiding the truth. It has a way of finding the light. He returned to Whitehaven Mansions, where Hastings was waiting, his anxiety evident. Well, Hastings demanded. What happened? Was it a trap? Poirot smiled, placing the ledger on the table. No trap, mon ami. Only a young man with a secret he could no longer bear. The ledger is found, and with it, the last piece of the puzzle. The case, it is truly closed now. Hastings stared at the ledger, a mix of triumph and relief washing over him. So Robert wasn't involved in the murder after all. Just protecting. The family name, precisement, Poirot said, settling into his armchair. And now, Hastings. Let us have that tizen. The little gray cells, they have earned their rest. Chapter 14. The final piecest morning light filtered through the tall windows of Hercule Poirot's flat in Whitehaven Mansions, casting a soft glow over the polished furniture and the neatly ranged bookshelves Poirot sat at. His desk, the recovered ledger open before him, its pages revealing the tangled web of Sir Reginald Ashwood's financial misdeeds. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed, still processing the revelations from Robert Ashwood's meeting at the Café Royal the previous evening. The ledger, with its meticulous records of loans and debts, had answered one lingering question. But Hastings felt a restless curiosity, as though the case still held secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot, Hastings began, breaking the quiet. You're certain this ledger closes the matter? I mean, it explains Robert's secrecy. But what about those names he mentioned, those powerful people Sir Reginald was involved with? Couldn't they have had a motive for his death, someone outside Lady Evelyn's scheme? Poirot looked up from the ledger, his eyes sharp and attentive. Mon ami, your mind, it is always seeking the next mystery. Non? The ledger, it confirms what we suspected. Sir Reginald's recklessness created enemies. But none of them were present at Ashwood Hall on the night of the murder. The evidence, the cryptic messages, the brooch, the poison, it all points to Lady Evelyn and Dr. Langley. To look beyond them is to chase phantoms. Hastings frowned, unconvinced. I suppose you're right, but it feels incomplete somehow. And what about Miss Marple? She seemed so certain there was more to the human side of this case. Her talk of tangled roots and hidden motives, it stuck with me. Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Mademoiselle Marple, she has a gift for seeing the heart beneath the surface. But in this case, her insights and mine, they converge. Lady Evelyn's guilt was not only in her actions, but in her nature, her pride, her fear of losing her status. The ledger, it adds context, but it does not change the truth. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Poirot's valet, George, entered, carrying a silver tray with a single letter. For you, sir, he said, presenting it to Poirot before retreating with a discreet bow. Poirot examined the envelope, his brow furrowing slightly. It was postmarked from St. Mary Mead, and the handwriting was delicate yet precise. Curial. he murmured, breaking the seal and unfolding the letter. Hastings watched, his curiosity piqued. As Poirot's eyes scanned the page, "It is from Mademoiselle Marple," Poirot announced, his tone tinged with intrigue. He began to read aloud. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, I trust this letter finds you well in London. I have been reflecting on our time at Ashwood Hall, and I must commend your extraordinary skill in unraveling Lady Evelyn's crime. Your method is a marvel, and I am but a humble observer in comparison. Yet, I cannot help but share a small observation from my village perspective. In St. Mary Mead, we often find that the smallest details at glance, a hesitation reveal the deepest truths. I wonder if young Robert Ashwood's silence during our discussions was not merely shame, but a fear of something greater. Perhaps you have already considered this, but I thought it worth mentioning. Do forgive an old woman's musings. Should you ever pass through St. Mary Mead, my door is always open for tea. Yours sincerely, Jane Marple." Hastings leaned forward, his eyes wide. Good heavens, Poirot, she's thinking the same thing I am. Robert's silence, it wasn't just about the ledger, was it? There's something more he's not telling us. Poirot set the letter down. His fingers steepled as he considered its contents. Mademoiselle Marple, she is perceptive. Hastings, her observation. It aligns with your unease. Robert Ashwood, he confessed to taking the ledger, but his fear was palpable, not only of scandal, but of something specific. Hastings paced the room, his mind racing. Those names in the ledger, could one of them be connected to the murder? Not directly, perhaps. But what if Sir Reginald's dealings with these powerful people prompted Lady Evelyn's actions? Maybe she wasn't just protecting her status, but shielding someone else. Poirot's eyes narrowed, and he returned to the ledger, flipping through its pages with renewed focus. An interesting theory, mon ami. Let us examine the names once more. Sir Reginald's loans were to men of influence, politicians, businessmen, even a minor noble. But one name, it stands out, Lord Cedric Marlowe. Hastings stopped pacing. Marlowe? I have heard of him, a financier, isn't he? Bit of a shady reputation. If the papers are to be believed. Precisement, Poirot said, tapping the page. Lord Marlowe borrowed a significant sum from Sir Reginald, secured against a failing venture. The debt was due to be called in the week of the murder. If Sir Reginald had pressed for repayment, it would have ruined Marlowe. Hastings' eyes lit up. So Marlowe had a motive, but he wasn't at Ashwood Hall. Could Lady Evelyn have been working with him, or protecting him? Poirot shook his head slowly. Non, Hastings. Lady Evelyn's motive was her own, her fear of losing the estate, her affair with Dr. Langley. But it is possible that Marlowe's debt added pressure, a hidden catalyst for her desperation. The ledger, it does not prove a connection, but it suggests a shadow in the background. Hastings sat down heavily, his mind spinning. So what do we do? Confront Marlowe? Hand the ledger to the police? Poirot closed the ledger with a decisive snap. For now, we do nothing. The case of Sir Reginald's murder is solved. Lady Evelyn and Dr. Langley are guilty, and the evidence is clear. But this ledger, it opens a door to another matter, one that may require further investigation. I shall speak to Chief Inspector Japp. He will know how to handle Lord Marlowe discreetly. Hastings nodded, though his unease remained. And Miss Marple? Should we write back to her? Poirot smiled, a rare warmth in his expression. Oui, mon ami. I shall write to Mademoiselle Marple and thank her for her insight. She has reminded me that even in a closed case, the human heart may still hold secrets. Her village wisdom. It is not so different from the method of Hercule Poirot. As Poirot took up his pen to compose a reply, Hastings leaned back, his thoughts drifting to the quiet village of St. Mary Mead and the unassuming spinster, who saw so much. The case of Ashwood Hall was closed, but the ledger and Miss Marple's letter had cast a new light on its shadows. For now, though, the rhythm of London life resumed, and Hastings felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that Poirot's little grey cells, and perhaps Miss Marple's tangled roots, would always be ready for the next mystery. Chapter 15. The order restoreth. Fire crackled softly in the hearth of Hercule Poirot's Whitehaven mansion's flat, casting a warm glow over the room's orderly elegance. The ledger, now safely in the hands of Chief Inspector Jabb, lay closed on Poirot's desk, its secrets no longer a burden to Robert Ashwood or a mystery to Poirot. Captain Hastings sat in an armchair, a cup of tea in hand, his earlier unease softened by the familiar comfort of Poirot's meticulously ranged surroundings. The case of Ashwood Hall had been resolved, yet the echoes of Miss Marple's letter and the ledger's revelations lingered, like the final notes of a symphony. Poirot stood by the window, his silhouette framed against the grey London sky, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mon ami," he said, turning to Hastings with a faint smile, "you are pensive this evening. The case, it is closed. The guilty are in custody, and yet you sit as if expecting another cryptic message to appear." Hastings chuckled, setting his cup down. "I suppose I'm just marveling at it all, Poirot. Lady Evelyn's cunning, Dr. Langley's complicity, Robert's hidden ledger, and Miss Marple, of all people, pointing us to that final piece. It's been quite a tangle, hasn't it?" Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. A tangle indeed, but one that the little grey cells have unraveled. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashwood was a crime of ambition and desperation concealed by clever misdirection. The cryptic messages each a taunt from Lady Evelyn were her attempt to outwit us, but the truth, it cannot be hidden from Hercule Poirot. Hastings leaned forward, his curiosity undimmed. "And what about Lord Marlowe?" The ledger showed he owed Sir Reginald a fortune. "Do you think he had any part in this, even indirectly?" Poirot's expression grew thoughtful as he returned to his desk, his fingers brushing the edge of the ledger's cover. "Lord Marlowe, he is a shadow in this story. Hastings, his debt. It added pressure to Sir Reginald's financial ruin, which in turn fueled Lady Evelyn's desperation. But there is no evidence that he orchestrated the murder. Chief Inspector Jabb, he will investigate Marlowe's dealings discreetly. If there is more to uncover, it is a matter for another day." Hastings nodded, though a flicker of doubt remained. "I can't help but think of Miss Marple's letter. She saw something in Robert's silence, didn't she? Something we almost missed. It makes me wonder what else she might notice if she were here." Poirot's mustache twitched with amusement. "Mademoiselle Marple, she is a rare soul. Her village, it is a microcosm of the world, and her observations, they are as sharp as any detective's. Her letter, it reminded me that even the most orderly mind must listen to the whispers of the heart. Together, we have restored order to Ashwood Hall, but her insight it was a valuable thread in our tapestry." Hastings smiled, warmed by the memory of the unassuming spinster. "She did invite us for tea in St. Mary Mead. Perhaps we should take her up on it someday. I'd wager she'd have a story or two to share." "Perhaps, mon ami," Poirot said, his tone softening. "But for now, we return to our lives. The world, it is full of disorder, and it is our duty mine, and perhaps Mademoiselle Marple's to bring clarity where there is confusion." A gentle knock at the door announced George, who entered with a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "This arrived for you, sir," he said, placing it on the desk before retreating. Poirot's curiosity was piqued as he unwrapped the parcel, revealing a small, neatly wear-upon scarf and soft grey wool, accompanied by a note in Miss Marple's delicate hand. Dear Monsieur Poirot and Captain Hastings, a small token from St. Mary Mead, made with my own hands. I trust it will keep you warm in London's chill. Thank you for the privilege of witnessing your remarkable work at Ashwood Hall. Should our paths cross again, I shall have the kettle ready. Yours sincerely, Jane Marple. Poirot held up the scarf, his eyes twinkling with delight. Mon Dieu, Hastings, Mademoiselle Marple, she is not only wise but generous. This scarf, it is as precise and thoughtful as her observations. Hastings laughed, his earlier doubts melting away. She's a marvel, isn't she? I say, Poirot, you should wear it. It'd suit your impeccable style. Poirot draped the scarf over his shoulders, striking a pose with mock grandeur. Perhaps, mon ami, it shall become a new signature of Hercule Poirot. But for now, let us celebrate the resolution of our case with a tisane, and perhaps a toast to our friend in St. Mary Mead. As George prepared the tisane, Poirot and Hastings settled by the fire, the warmth of the room and the satisfaction of a case well solved enveloping them. The mystery of Ashwood Hall had been a labyrinth of motives and misdirection, but through Poirot's logic and Miss Marple's insight, the truth had emerged. Lady Evelyn and Dr. Langley faced justice. Robert Ashwood's burden had been lifted, and the ledger's secrets were now in safer hands. Outside, the London evening settled into a quiet hum, the city's pulse a reminder of the countless stories yet to unfold. Poirot sipped his tisane, his mind already turning to the next challenge, while Hastings, content for the moment, felt a quiet gratitude for the order they had restored and for the unexpected ally they had found in a village spinster with a knack for seeing the truth. As the firelight danced, Poirot raised his cup. To order, Hastings, and to the little grey cells and perhaps to the tangled roots of Mademoiselle Marple. Hastings clinked his cup against Poirot's, a grin spreading across his face. To order, Poirot, and to St. Mary Mead. With that, the case of Ashwood Hall faded into memory, its final pieces settled, its shadows dispelled by the light of truth.